located on Treaty 6 territory in Métis Nation Region Number 4. These are the traditional territories and ancestral lands of the Indigenous peoples, including the Plains Cree First Nations, Assinawuche Winnewak Rocky Mountain First Nations, Stoney, Tsuut'ina, Nakota, Dene Sulin, Salto, Mountain Métis, Michif, and many other communities that continue to enrich the land on which the town of Hinton was established. And with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 4:01. Council, any additions or deletions to today's agenda? Councillor Hawes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Michaels. I would like to add in our closed session a second item, and it's in regards to a follow-up on a past code of conduct in reference to the recent correspondence from the ombudsman, just to get some insight on that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council? Administration, any additions or deletions?
Nothing to add, nothing to delete, sir.
Thank you, CO Hanlon. With that, Council, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Hawes?
Sorry, I'm sorry, sir. We've lost our Zoom connection. If we could just ask Council to hold for a moment, we're establishing it right now. Perhaps while we have a moment, sir, if I could, administration will be utilizing a bit more technology tonight, on Zoom. Sorry about this. We have what's called an iCompass system, and you're going to see tonight when we are working with you to finalize your motions. It'll look a little different than in the past, but it is part of our system, and it should work much better for all of us, including council, going forward. But it'll look a little different than you've seen in the past. So.
Okay, thank you for that.
Alexa, do you have a live stream? Is it on? I don't know why I lost it.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor, to you and council, that's just some additional information for delegation item number 1.
Okay. Thank you.
Worship, we're good to go. Sorry for the delay.
Thank you, administration. For those who are watching, our apologies for the technical difficulties. With that, there's been one recommended addition to the agenda, and I have Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we adopt the regular council agenda as amended for February 15th, 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor to adopt the agenda as amended. Any debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. That'll bring us to our council minutes for adoption. Council, any questions? Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, just one small but I think important on page 6 of 73. Appointment of Community Engagement and Advisory Committee. I believe the word is recuse instead of refuse. I think just to make that change.
Sir, through you to Councillor Hawes, I would agree, is Councillor did in fact recuse himself. Thank you.
Perfect. And with that, I'd like to move that we adopt the regular meeting of council minutes for February 1st, 2022.
As amended?
As amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, any debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. That'll bring us to our citizens' minute with council. If you would like to take a moment, come up front, please state your name. The floor would be yours.
Hello, Council. My name is Bill McDonald. I was up in front of you a couple of weeks ago regarding the highway signs. Okay, it's come to my attention now, okay, that the signs have been approved. Okay, and the cost for the signs is $1,000. Okay, and with an additional $1,000 to install them. This information just came forth to me from Scott. He advised me that the previous person before him had taken 5 years. He'd done this in 16 months, which is great. What I'm here to ask tonight is that if council can find the $2,000 to pay for these highway signs for the Valley businesses. My understanding is it's 4 panels at $250 each, and it's about $1,000 to install them. I did come up and ask you if that money could be taken out of the COVID business money. I'm not sure if that can still be done, but I'm just wondering if there's any other avenue we could explore.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for that, Mr. McDonald. We appreciate you bringing that forward to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with a minute with council? Administration, were there any others registered via Zoom today?
Sir, nobody registered via Zoom.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. That'll bring us to our delegations and presentations for today. The first matter is bylaw matter for 137 Athabasca Avenue, Mrs. Claire Kovac.
Hello, my name is Claire Kovacs.
Dino Brown.
We are the owners of the property at 137 Athabasca Avenue. Can I remove this?
Technically, at the moment, you have to maintain it.
Okay. So in my opening, just wanted to say, hello, dragons. I'm seeking a compassionate heart today. On a serious note, though, the reason we are here, is to dispute a ticket that we got for failing to remove ice and snow from the sidewalks at 137 Athabasca. I have a ticket that was issued to me. Ticket number 3573, and pictures, I believe you got.
Yeah, there's 3
That was
photos.
attached by the officer who wrote the citation.
You should have a copy of that, correct?
And on the back of that ticket, there's option 2. If you wish to dispute a violation tag, written notice must be addressed to the bylaw Hinton. So that's why I'm here, to dispute. On the reverse side of the ticket, it says write, so I wrote. But will anyone listen? Excuse me, I'm a bit nervous, so bear with me. So I wrote this email to the officer along with this picture, which shows I think you have this photo as well, that this had indeed been addressed the very day.
Yeah, and this,
and I have a
Just-
partner.
Just to note that this letter was, we were asking for dismissal, which we probably should have worded it. We were asking
For
for
a
a warning
rather than,
lesser, because it certainly,
thank you for bringing that up. So I wrote the letter, and did you all get a copy of the email that says no response? Well, I think that was the one that was just handed to you. And on that email, there is the response from, if it would be okay, I'd just like to refer to him as Mac, because I don't really know how to pronounce his name.
de Boudreaux.
So anyways, before I got a response, I got a penalty in the mail, which I have here, which upset me because I was waiting for a response to my original email, but I didn't get it. So prior to receiving the citation, the sidewalk had been handled that very day. It shows you that picture. So then I wrote in no response, I had said that I got a penalty before I received a response. And I think that due to the situation at hand with COVID-19, I feel that a warning is sufficient. When this building has had zero income for 2 years, which I explained in the email. The hardest hit businesses initially were hospitality and rental. Am I loud enough?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And that was administered by the federal government. They were closing businesses and expecting companies to waive rent for months. And we did fairly well with that. What I think we need is a hardship exemption, not a fine. A warning would be adequate, especially after having informed the officers of our situation, but nobody listens. We got no reply. I'm not Trudeau, I can't print money. If I could, I'd probably go to jail for it, but it's been a very difficult time. Nor is this a photo radar opportunity for the town to generate money. We feel that we've kind of been victimized because our concerns are not being taken into consideration and our letters were ignored. So it says if you want to dispute something, to write. So we did, and we got ignored and got another penalty. And this note I'm bringing up because it has been difficult times and a lot of businesses received CEBA loans. And if loans had not been issued, especially for that property, which has been sitting closed for 2 years, we would not have been able to pay our taxes. My CEBA goes to you and excessive utility bills. So I'm granted money from the government and I turn around and I pay it to the government, and it's getting a little bit difficult to deal with. The reference made in the no response there from Mr. Boudreaux, Mac, I'll just refer to him. It says that he states that we were to remove snow 48 hours after the snow stops. This is wind caused from all of the businesses' rooftops. The wording of the bylaw, the quote by Mac, is faulty. It had been addressed after snowfall as shown on the December 3rd photo that he attached. So he kind of did my work for me. You can see that in the photo that there has been sand and salt on the sidewalk. He indicates the responsibility is ours even if the business is closed. We've owned that building for 20 plus years. And believe me, we know our responsibilities. We've been handling them for all of these years. We're not vacant landowners. We're residents and we comply. And nor have we received a citation from the officers before. The peace officer who issued the ticket did my homework for me. The sidewalk was not ignored. In the December 3rd photo, you can see the sand and salt were present. We were out of the country. We waited 2 years finally to get down to the States to deal with matters. We had issues down there, but we heard of it via Facebook. The individual responsible for sidewalk maintenance was hospitalized and did not inform us. And I made note of that in the original email as well. But via Facebook, we ensured it was addressed. People were trying to get in contact with us because they had said that the sidewalks were an issue. So we addressed it immediately. We addressed our responsibility that very day that the ticket was issued before we were even aware of the citation or any notification from the town whatsoever. That photograph that I sent was taken 3 hours after the citation was written. And we hadn't even had a notice of that citation. So my question to you, I want to turn this around a little bit. When does the town become responsible? We were out of the country, we were unaware, we don't expect officers to understand that. But there needs to be some responsibility on the town's behalf. 3 times Officer Bars took photos before he deemed the sidewalk unsafe and issued a ticket. 3 times. He's there 3 different days. Yet he walked away from an unsafe situation, leaving the hazard for citizens to navigate. When does the town take responsibility? When does it become responsible? What does the town expect of their employees? Is it acceptable for them to walk away from a situation deemed hazardous? Could the sidewalk be cordoned off to reroute people to prevent an accident? If you expect me to pay a fine, the least you could do is to resolve the problem rather than walk away from a hazardous situation. Instead of trying to contact us through other methods, Officer Bars just leaves one voicemail and stops all other attempts to contact us. He left a voicemail on our home phone, on our answering system there. The officer, if he has 0 response from people, especially when there's a hazardous situation, at that time, should something be done by the town to ensure the safety of citizens? I get it, it's our sidewalk, but when nobody is responding to your calls, perhaps the town should be responsible too, instead of shirking all of the responsibility. No, the peace officer picks the easy button. Instead of contacting Miss Jennifer Fiddler, the tax clerk, who was gracious enough to provide me with all of the available contacts, 1 home phone, 1 cell phone for Dino, 2 emails on file for each of us. 2 emails, 1 for each of us on file. If I can find this information that easily, why can't the officers? I did the officers a service. I had removed my home phone number from the contact information, so this won't happen again in the future. Shall we do a little report card on the town? On the town officers and the employees? Would the officer ticket the town itself for not addressing icy sidewalks and easements? Town is also negligent for easement maintenance. No snow and ice removal or even sanded. I took this photo on January 28th. This is the easement between Tamarack and Lodgepole near the Alder Apartments. The ice was this thick. January 28th. I took this photo from the easement from Tamarack to Lodgepole. It's on the upper side of the hill. It exits near the school. I removed the snow to show the ice underneath. Extremely hazardous and dangerous. This is the same one, but this is at the bottom of the hill. And that ice, again, was super thick, covered in snow, extremely slippery. That was on the 4th. On the 9th, I came back again. This is the same easement as the last 2. And this shows how icy those easements are. I believe this is town property. I believe the town's responsible for maintenance on these easements. I may be wrong. I want to show you this one too. And this one is another, they have the same issue with the wind, where the snow comes off the rooftops and It didn't snow 48 hours necessarily, but the wind comes, and we live in Chinook country. It's pretty hard to control Chinooks. Anyway,
It's like it comes off the top of the
I
building
spoke
and
with,
collects on that side.
right. And in our instance, it's all of the businesses.
Yeah,
The
it's
snow
right
comes
down
off
from
of
the-
all of the roofs from all of the businesses, and it lands on our sidewalk, and we're pretty diligent about maintaining it. We try. So I spoke with 2 students. They asked me to only use their first names on February 9th, the easement where it showed the full length. And they had used the easement from Tamarack Avenue to Lodgepole Drive, exiting near the school ground. She noted she'd had numerous falls due to icy and dangerous conditions and was hurt. And both complained about horrific conditions in most of the easements. We just completed our property taxes for Powers so that you guys can tax us. And the highest expense on that property is the town taxes. You can thank Trudeau for receiving those taxes because we didn't generate any revenue to pay that. I feel that the points that I've brought forward in the red letters that I wrote, says on the back of the ticket, right, so I did. I feel that they were very legitimate and have been ignored or just not listened to. Like the town often says, if you have any concerns, contact us. I contacted, and I just feel that I was ignored. So to sum it up, I would like to implore that a warning would be more than adequate at this time. I have not yet paid the ticket. I did have the penalty waived by Mac. I feel he waived it because he didn't respond to my letter initially, but he still wants me to pay it.
No, he states in the letter that the $20 was in good faith. He wouldn't charge us the
Right,
penalty because we've been keeping
The sidewalks.
sidewalks good since the.
And nothing's changed on our part. We still have the same individual who happened to be in and out of the hospital during that time. And he still continues to maintain the sidewalks for
Yeah,
us.
so just to recap it, it's kind of a lot of info, but basically we were away. We had someone that was dealing with our sidewalks, and the elements in this town can be kind of horrific. Wind and ice and snow. And basically he fell ill and didn't contact us. So someone through Facebook had contacted us. We were in the States, and we promptly got my daughter and son-in-law to address the problem. And then we came home on the 7th of December, which was the day after my daughter had dealt with the ice. And yeah, basically we didn't hear the voicemail until the 8th or 9th, and then we got the citation in the mail, and then we got obviously the $20 tacked onto that. So guess we're kind of leaving it in your hands.
All right, well, first and foremost, thanks for your delegation today and coming forward. I know these things sometimes are frustrating, and what I will speak on first is the pandemic and COVID and the stresses on business are definitely understood as one segment. What I want to do with this is try to extrapolate or separate the two and say, what is, from a town's perspective, outside of other frustrating factors, difficulties of businesses that you've faced in past years, what specifically could we look to improve, and what's been at fault, right, specifically in your situation? My one question, I guess, for administration is just the part regarding the primary contact, because in hearing your story, I do like that the town contacted you on the 3rd, not giving you a ticket on the 3rd. I'm assuming they wanted to give you a warning.
I don't know when the town contacted us.
The date of the voicemail was.
I don't know what the date
Was that the
was.
date of the voicemail?
From listening to your story and I thought the voicemail was left on the 3rd and the ticket was issued 3 days
No, the
later.
picture was taken on the 3rd.
In the
There was
voicemail?
one, I don't know when the voicemail was
Yeah,
issued.
yes, your worship, he was, actually, he did leave the voicemail, I believe it was the 3rd, because that's the time when he took the first pictures before he cited us, right? And basically, we didn't get that message until after the 8th, which the problem had already basically been.
So I guess my question to administration, just not really understanding the protocol of this, does every residence or non-residential dwelling or business, does each one have a labeled primary contact info? So, because I know Ms. Kovacs was saying that now that her cell or that number has been removed, this shouldn't happen. I guess they will be contacting you another method. What is the protocol the town has on what number to contact first? Because I think this is the root of the problem. If they would have contacted you a different way,
Definitely.
maybe you would have found
Cell
out.
phone.
Right.
But in defense of the town, I that's what I want to try to find out, that at least they made an effort 3 days prior, didn't give a ticket. Now, any insight on what determines the primary contact? Mr. Hanlon?
Sir, if I could, through you to all of council, first off, I do appreciate Ms. Kovacs clarifying that with our tax clerks and sorting that out at our end. I don't know and if there's anybody on my team here, but my experience in other communities is that information is relatively hit and miss. Some people give us information, they give us phone numbers, email addresses, some refuse, and or some don't keep it current. So I don't know what our situation is. And I'm not sure if there's anybody here that can join us, but I know some communities I've worked in, we have no contact information, and others, such as we have with the Kovacs, they've given us plenty of information. And that really does play a key role in allowing our community peace officers to reach out and try to reach people in these instances. But I don't know, Mac, are you with us? Can you help us with this a bit on what we've got on file?
Yes, I am here. Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Through the chair to council. On all occurrences when we have a complaint and there's ice buildup or snow buildup, we contact the homeowner or the business owner prior to issuing a citation, sorry. And if we can't reach them, we issue the citation after 48 hours.
Okay, thank you for that. What I'll do, I have one other question, but I'll open it up to council if they have anything. Council, any questions? Like Councilor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to clarify, we have how many bylaws on staff? One?
Sir, through Councilor Race to all of council, I'll just ask Mac, how many, I believe it's just one, but I want to make sure.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Through the chair, we currently have one peace officer on duty at any given time.
So may I follow up? So would the procedure be he would go back to the office and then hand this over to Jean, and then Jean would do investigating of email addresses, phone numbers, or does he do that?
Through the chair to Councilor Race, that is correct. He would either research the information himself, or Jean would assist in that process and get contact information for the property owner.
And one more, if I may. So your email, January 18th, to our fire chief, you say, "Dear sir, in my opinion, you are a," have you had any discussions?
No,
Since that with our,
no.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Race. My only other question, I guess, pertains to the, you had mentioned that, and it looks like some work was done on the sidewalk, so some sanding was done. I guess, and maybe it's not a question to be answered today, but if possible by administration, how do we determine, and I'm looking at it, it looks like it's sanded, but it's not completely done. How do we determine if something has been, there's been some effort put into it and not? So for me, I'll speak candidly. Generally, I like these things to be resolved with warnings and things of that nature, and unless it falls into the category that it's egregious. And I do like that the town called you first, and it sucks that it's a number that you, I guess, didn't check for 3 days, but they made the effort not to give you a ticket. So I'm weighing that. Then I'm looking, if some work was done, then that kind of sucks a little bit more that you would get a citation to some extent. If partial work was done, so it was sanded. I guess my question to administration, does this fall in a category where, in hindsight and looking at it, that no, it didn't fit enough effort or work to be done on the sidewalk and it deserved a citation? I know it's a challenging question to ask, but that's the crux of it, because if nothing's done and the sidewalk's full, yeah, I'm of the belief it sucks, but you get a citation sometimes if you don't do it. But hearing you, it sounds like there was some sanding done, but just not the complete clearing. I'll go to you first. Was that your understanding that some work was done on that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
What was it?
And again, Mr. Mayor, if I may, that very sidewalk had been dealt with 3 hours after the citation. We weren't aware.
He's
There-
referring to
and there
prior
was-
to the site.
There was, yes, it shows in the picture
The third, I
that
think,
the
the
officer
picture of the
took.
third.
It shows in the picture that there was sand,
You
and
referred
salt.
to the ticket, Your Worship,
so it wasn't ignored.
the pictures on the ticket
Right.
show that there was some attempt
The
prior
December
to
3rd
the Chinook and the blowing in the snow and the melting.
I'm gonna go to Councilor Hawes.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming forward. I guess, from my perspective though, and I guess what I'm doing is I'm also comparing, I'm looking at the November 30th one. And I think we can agree, it's pretty full, right? Like a lot of ice on December 30th. And if I may, I just have to, because I look across the street at one of your neighboring businesses and there's not a lick of snow, ice whatsoever on that spot. I look at then the attempt on December 3rd, and I'm sorry, I have to move them around.
No, you're fine.
There's sand on it, yes, but I also look at your neighboring ones and there's not, they're dry bone. There's not a lick of snow or ice. And if I were to compare the two, it's pretty hard to say that that is actually cleared. I mean, regardless, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you.
May I respond?
And then I look on December 6th, and again, it's covered. And I look at your neighbors as well, and they're clear. And I guess this is where I'm coming from personally, as I'm looking at it. And that, I realize it's tough to get a citation, but we're also, in my opinion, protecting also that liability. Because if somebody would have slipped and fall on that, it would have been on your insurance, on everything else. This is an attempt to try and help to get. So I'm comparing the difference between the two, and it's honestly, it's, if the person did put sand on it, yes, but no attempt was made to get rid of any of that debris on the 3rd. And then on the 6th, it's covered again, whether it's wind or what, and I get there's wind, but I also look at our policy and property owners are responsible. It doesn't say snow, it's just removal of snow, ice, and other debris on the sidewalks. And it doesn't talk about snow or whatever. I realize the wind. I have a house too. I have to do my yard half of the driveway every time because it comes off my roof and it's almost like it's, a blizzard happened. I get that. But it's also that responsibility of the property owner. So I'm
We understand that.
I'm comparing to the other, and if I may, just one quick question to the administration. Administration and to Mr. Beaudrop, my understanding is a lot of our citations are given through citizen complaints. It's a complaint-based program, pretty much. And I'm just curious, was this a complaint-based ticket?
Through the chair to Councillor Hawes, yes, this was stemmed from a complaint from a neighboring business.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, that's my comments about, I'm looking at it. I'm trying to be as fair as possible, but it's kind of, the pictures are also saying a lot, so, for me.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Council? We have an opportunity to either, at this time, give any direction, or we could just take the new information, the emails that we were provided, and if there's nothing further, at least for myself.
May I respond?
Absolutely.
Councillor Hawes?
Mm-hmm.
You refer to other neighboring properties, but you don't refer to the front or the other side of our building. And I'm certain that you would have found they were cleared as well.
And if I may respond, I only have the pictures that are in front of me. I don't
Right.
have pictures of the side or
Right.
other, and I guess you then have a
I
corner lot.
would,
And so it's, so
exactly.
I agree, but
It's huge.
I hear that, but I too used to live on a corner too, and I had a responsibility of a big sidewalk, and it was a pain,
Right.
right? And I get that, I totally get it, and the circumstances, I guess, like I said, I'm just trying to be as fair as possible, and the fact that it's complaint-based, we had other citizens complaining about it, so that's my.
Absolutely, and that's, was the information I was given, Councillor Hawes, was that someone had mentioned, they called it in, and said
Right.
it was slippery sidewalks.
And I
But
would,
if you're referring to the,
that's in
if
November.
you're referring to the neighboring sidewalks as those in the distance,
Mhm.
which you probably are,
That's the ones I can see.
if you look, that building owned by Miss Councillor Labarge, it has a roof on it. That roof thing collects the snow, doesn't fall onto the sidewalk. He doesn't have nearly the problem we do. He's more than welcome to comment on that as well. But this particular building, it's been like this for years. It's a war on that east side of that building. And it's because from the bowling alley right to our building, that snow comes ripping across there, accumulates. So
I also have another response, and I will refer to the December 6th picture. 3 hours later, same day, just saying. I get it, we got the citation, but we addressed it before we even knew, before we received a voicemail.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Councillor Taylor.
I move we accept the information provided at 137 Athabasca Avenue for information.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a direction on the floor. Councillor LeBert.
Just a real quick comment. I have nothing to do with the building next door.
So council, we have a motion on the floor. And for myself, I'll look deeper into this, especially the email that we received. We appreciate your time coming forward and bringing this. I think at the very least, it's I think a learning experience to try to figure out how to implement these things and the impacts it has and the efforts that are made. And honestly, it's not something that we deal with very often, especially from a council perspective. So I do want to thank you for your time, but we do have a motion on the floor. Any further debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? So thanks again. And if there's anything further, we'll be in contact with you.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, that'll bring us to our second delegation for today, which is the junior achievements. And I think we are being joined via Zoom.
Yes, we are, sir, and we're on pages 14 to 24 of your agenda package as well.
Hello, Janice.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you? The floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having us today. Jennifer's just going to hop on right away, and we have a presentation to share.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I just was given control of my camera and microphone. It's great to see you all. Thank you so much for making some time for us today. My name is Jennifer Martin, and I'm the president and CEO of Junior Achievement Northern Alberta and Northwest Territories. If it's okay, I could share my screen. We have a presentation that I believe has been provided to council. But if it's okay with the administrator here, I can share my screen and walk you through it. So I'm going to do that now. Let's get set up here real quick. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, it's coming.
Yes. We're good?
Yeah, it looks,
Sorry.
it's black right now, Jennifer.
Okay, 1 sec, I'll just try again here. Sometimes it takes a couple of, I'll just read a little more.
Oh, now your video's on, which is good.
Okay, how about now?
Still saying, oh, there we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. Okay. Sometimes it just takes a couple times to load. It's amazing how good we've all gotten in the last 2 years at this. So Junior Achievement Northern Alberta, we want to be here for Hinton. Our 3 pillars are teaching youth financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and work readiness. And JA is the only organization that teaches all 3 of these areas to young people. So that's a little bit about what sets us apart from others. JA has been around for more than 100 years, and we teach youth mainly in classrooms, but sometimes with partner organizations such as YWCA or Boys and Girls Clubs. We teach youth in grades 3 to 12, financial literacy, work readiness, and entrepreneurship. And then we have our one-of-a-kind company program that focuses especially on creating businesses in towns like Hinton. We'll impact 20,000 students across Northern Alberta this school year, and we don't want Hinton to be missing out on that. Our trained volunteers from the business community deliver our programs. We have even had Mayor Michaels and your Economic Development Officer, Scott Kovach, do that. And so we want to thank them for being in the classroom and helping us impact youth. Our values align strongly with those of many Albertans. Free enterprise, creating a strong and educated workforce that understands, or at least has an appreciation for local businesses and economics and why those are so important to all of us. And finally, a recognition of the need to develop entrepreneurial, financial literacy, and leadership skills, along with work readiness in our youth. JE helps create a generation of young leaders in your town who want to invest in businesses there, in your economy, and see it thrive. So JA is special because kids learn by doing in our programs. It's interactive, they're hands-on learning. It helps them understand, rather than getting a lecture, helps them understand things about life and business so that they can go forward and continue to build their communities where they grow up. In partnership with businesses and educators, JA brings the real world to students, teaching them the things that I just mentioned earlier. And as I said, as opposed to a lecture, we're really showing them by the activities that they perform what their futures could look like. So the benefits for Hinton's youth are, there's 4 key ones. Our programs can be teacher-led, but they may also be delivered by volunteers from the real world of work. And between our content and the program leader's aspirational impact on youth, when someone from the business community comes into the classroom, JA students get what's missing in the curriculum, as well as understanding some career exploration pieces and the skills and actually the confidence to go out and try to succeed. So, as with anything, early education and intervention are keys to success. So our programs are delivered in schools, and there's no cost to schools or students or their families. And the programming is a graduated pedagogy. So students learn best when their school brings JA back year over year as they get older and more sophisticated to build on their learnings. In the younger grades, we teach students a bit about the basic economics of personal finance: earn, save, spend. They get a small taste of business and entrepreneurship in a business of our own and a business world. So how does money move around the town? They can create imaginary businesses in those programs, marketing plans, and even budgets, using examples that they're probably already often doing, like snow shoveling or baking cookies to sell. Through the middle school years, we focus a great deal on personal finance and preparing for the future, how a card really works, what things actually cost. And later, our World of Choices events for junior and senior high encourage them to consider finishing high school and post-secondary and help inspire the careers they may not have ever considered, if not for JA, including starting up a business in towns just like Hinton. And then there's JA's company program. It's our flagship program, and over the course of 18 weeks, youth in grades 9 to 12 learn how to start, run, and close a business. We operate 2 right now, and they're safely done in person if allowed, or virtual, so both options. And they're led by volunteers, mentors from the business community. They can also be teacher-led in school. Youth create a product, market, and sell it. We even make them file what would be their CRA taxes with the provincial and federal governments for small businesses. We also ask them to donate 10% of their net profits to a local charity of their choice. So really teaching them to be great corporate citizens. The impact of this program is significant. Teachers, as I said, can lead it in school, or youth can sign up, and we can run it in an after-school version led by mentors from the business community. We know that JA works, and we want to bring our results to Hinton. In 2010, the Boston Consulting Group did a study for JA USA and JA Canada. 5,000 JA alumni were surveyed, in addition to 5,000 members of the general population. We always knew that JA had a strong impact on our achievers, our young Albertans, and we have evidence. Here are a few examples of JA alumni, the way that people go on to create great things for themselves in their own lives, but also in their own communities. Another great stat is that for $1 invested into JA for youth, $45 is contributed back into society as these young people become adult achievers. So our funding sources are, well, we're a charity, so we rely completely on donations, and we've been feeling the effects of the downturn in Alberta, and then COVID struck. So funding trends typically do go towards local urgent needs, homeless shelters, food banks, healthcare, while the benefits of preventative programs, things that build for the future and eliminate the need for some of those urgent need issues, can be eliminated. There's a growing demand for JA programs across Alberta right now. We have more teachers asking for programs that we can sometimes provide, and that includes Hinton's educators. We have asks from teachers in Hinton for this, but our funding, of course, is limited, and funding for core programs, has been static in recent years. So we are a nonprofit. We get grants like the one that we're asking Hinton to consider today, corporate sponsorships, and individual donations. People who've been entrepreneurs, maybe they've taken JA and they want to help young people achieve what they have. Communities and Albertans across our province are making the decision, many of them, to invest in their local young people. We will raise $1.4 million this year to serve 20,000 youth, and we want to make sure that we put some of that money to work in your community. So for Hinton, in 2016-17, the town provided $5,000, and we delivered 275 JA programs. So that's classes of 25 to 30 students each. I've been with JA since late 2019. So in the next sort of school year, when I really hit the ground running, we noticed, Janice and I, that there was, I brought Janice back to JA. She'd been there previously, years before. We noticed that there was a gap in Hinton, and so we moved to address that. So without any support, just with our own donors from all across Alberta, we have been providing programming to Hinton, and we want to continue to do it this year. We are doing that, and we want to continue to do it in the years to come. So I'm going to let Janice in a moment speak about the numbers in the proposal. But as you can see at the bottom of this slide, your teachers are already asking for this all on their own. So we've been providing 264. So that's for classrooms or programs to grades 4 through 6. We'll renew our grade 7 to 9 programs from last year. That's an additional 200 students. And we'd like to ask for some support to help with that. We'd also love to leverage your gift. We have a request by CN. Their community board sits in Edmonton, serves through the province and the country, and they would like us to actually include in our proposal to CN what we're doing in Hinton. And so if council supports us, we can actually leverage your dollars to bring in even more money through CN to then provide even more programs.
Yeah, just to clarify, those are actually students, not programs. So We have it's approximately 500 students in Hinton will be impacted by our programs. And then the funding from CN, we're anticipating it will be somewhere between 10 to 20 times the investment. But what it shows is if the Hinton town is also supporting it, we can leverage it to get substantially more money from CN.
Thank you, Janice. And that's really it for me. We'll leave time for questions. We like to say that we create makers, not takers. And we are available for any teacher or educator in Hinton that approaches us. And we hope that with a little bit of support, we can serve them with the limited resources that we do have. And we're happy now to take your questions.
And Jennifer, we also got some really good news this year, didn't we, about a nomination?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to let you talk about that.
Oh, well, we're really proud to announce that JA worldwide, our programs are so impactful for youth. This year, we were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. So we're very proud. We'd love to share more of this with the students in Hinton. We know you are looking to diversify your economy, and we think that this is really going to help the next generation of entrepreneurs.
And the reason the Nobel nomination is so important was felt that, especially right now, youth have lost so much. They're disillusioned, they're lacking hope. I mean, think about it when you were, especially in junior and senior high with COVID, with the Alberta downturn before that, our youth are disillusioned right now. And so Nobel sees what junior achievement is doing as setting them up for successful futures. This is unprecedented what we have been through. So we really want to give youth the skills, the confidence, and a hopeful path forward.
Awesome. Well, Jennifer and Janice, thanks so much for this presentation. I'm a big fan of your program. I've done it a few years now, and it's great connecting with youth in our community. So we really love the work. What I'll do right now is I'll open it up for council if there's any questions or comments. Councillor LaBerge.
I'll make a quick comment. Have you, Janice, had any discussions with Community Futures here?
I did have a brief conversation with them. I know their offices were closed. Should we bring the JA Company program? I think that would be an excellent venue to utilize for hosting the kids on site, and it just gets them more familiar with the resources within Hinton as well.
Because I actually got a call from Nancy Robbins today, who runs this region, and she said she would love to get involved in partnering and funding of this initiative.
Oh, funding. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with them, but we do, as I said, work with partners as well as schools. We typically wouldn't ask another charitable partner for funding, but if that's an option, that's great to know.
No, it's federal government money, actually, not a charity.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Taylor.
Being a business kind of orientated activity here, it seems like it would be more suited for business funding than would government funding. Have you approached any of the business groups or Chamber of Commerce in town for funding?
Absolutely, we do look at businesses for our funding. I can tell you we're probably one of the only charities that has 100% of financial institutions, the federal financial institutions. So all the major banks fund JA. So that's within your community as well. In terms of local businesses, Frank Levson is one of our Business Hall of Fame laureates. And so Friesen Brothers has been supporting junior achievement programs across the province for many years as well through the Business Hall of Fame event. Local businesses, though, we would love the opportunity. I think that, as Jennifer kind of talked about, we're just starting to enter the community again. It's been a little while. We were really excited to come back last year, and the students participated in our Future Leaders Week. They were actually taught by some of the instructors from NATE, so it gave them like an insight into post-secondary as well.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. My question, I guess, just to clarify your ask, because it says retroactive $2,500 for 2020, 2021. What is your ask for this year in the calendar year? Because we run our budgets from January 1st to December 31st. What is your ask for 2022 and what is your ask for 2023?
It would be great if we could get the 5,000, but we're hoping that the town would help to sponsor 2 of the programs. So roughly $2,500 would cover 2 of the programs, but we're going to serve a lot more students than that with the other funding from the other funds that we raise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. What I'm hoping, because like I said, I love this program, and the timing kind of sucks because we're, if you see our agenda, we're looking to finalize our budget for this year. And it seems like there was a gap of 5 years or 4 years where we didn't fund this program. So it'd be nice to have something sort of worked out where we kind of have this discussion in early fall in order to prep us for the upcoming budget. I look to support it in coming years. It just makes it a challenge for now. So I know with COVID and the timing, it kind of is not ideal, but that's sort of our predicament of what we're going to have to discuss as a council.
Okay.
Council, anything further? Seeing none, Jennifer and Janice, thanks so much for taking the timing, and first and foremost, actually, for delivering this program. Like I said, I've seen it firsthand, and it reaches so many people in our community. It makes a difference, and we love your work, and you honestly get so much value for so little money, I believe. So it's a great program, and continue doing the great work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Council, that'll bring us to our third delegation, Town of Hinton Library Board. If you can make your way to the front. Councilor Hawes?
Yeah, Mayor, before we
My
do that,
apologies.
sorry, I just wanted to ask administration a question, what would be appropriate? Based on the presentation we just had and based on Mayor Michael's comments, how difficult it would be, just the fact that we're talking about budget tonight to get it into this one. But I don't want to lose for 2023 the budget for this program coming forward. So what would be the best avenue right now to capture so that when budget comes up for 2023 that it's captured in those discussions?
Mayor, through you to Councillor Haas, to all of council, my suggestion would be that Mr. Kovac would identify this as a budget item for the 2023 budget, and that I would be hoping to work with administration very quickly to move on to the development of that budget. And this could form part of that comes back for council through the balance of this year. My hope is to have a 2023 operating budget to you and adopted before the end of this year. So that would be my goal.
So no motion of council necessarily is needed at this point then?
Sir, through you to Councillor Hawes, I don't believe so. I think we see the commitment that council wishes to make to this, and it's had a past commitment. And so I think it's just a matter we include it in the upcoming budget and bring it back for discussion a little later this year for 2023.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin.
Councilor Hawes. Councilor LaBerge?
Just a real quick comment. I don't know if you have contact information for the presenters, but Community Future said they would pay that bill this year. So, I mean, we can talk about this, but I think that's a more appropriate pay anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Hanlon?
Sir, if I could, through you to Councillor LaBarge, to all of council, we do have their contact information, and administratively, we will connect the two parties and try to make sure that can happen for this year. And hopefully for ongoing years as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Councilor LaBerge. Council, anything further before we move on? Seeing none, and now it'll be our third item, the Town of Hinton Library Board. Hello, gentlemen. Hi.
Hello, Council and Mayor. Welcome again. Yes, this is the library's little snippet. I believe 2 weeks ago, Councillor Taylor brought a motion forward asking that $20,000 be removed from our budget, which led us on a nice little gopher hole trip into our budget and into our finances as a whole. And I'd like to, first of all, thank Councillor Taylor for that motion, because it made us think really hard on what we need to do. And so we have found out through town administration that our reserve status is quite high. Okay, as that was the motion that you guys have in your package, is that we were, for this year, it's not unaudited yet, it's $97,000 going back into a reserve. Okay, that's unaudited, and last year's audit didn't come through until, I believe it was late September, and we found out there was an additional 60 for that one as well. And so what we'd like to do is to try to, and we have that for with the 60, so to the end of this past year, it was $229,000. We would like to see it as a library board in the $100,000 to the $125,000 range for an active use of what we do with our reserves. Okay, for extra programming, you could set as a list as well in your package for that. And so for this year, just to take some of the bump out, we decided as a board that the 60 plus the 80,000 for this year be taken from our reserves. So that would be $140,000 off of what our ask is. Okay, this will help knock our reserves down to a more reasonable level within the town, and help us and help you guys try to find money for other programs that you guys want to sponsor at this moment. The second part of this is we would like a time with council and our board to go over, and this was what Hans used to say, it was showing apples to apples and what funding in the library is like. And they'll help explain our situation and Edson's situation together with council, so that they understand our funding models and what our prices are like. And we are very much in line to what Edson is now. They have shared their budget with us, and we did host a couple of counselors to come in and do that, and I think it has helped. So again, this is something we want to do as a whole council and the whole library board with the help of town administration and library administration. So yes, as you can tell, if there's any questions, this is the ask I'd like to bring forward, give money back to you guys. So
I would also like to add there that the additional $80,000 surplus that we got from 2021 was due to restrictions for 2021 and the closure of the library. So the library was budgeted for 3,000 hours for 2021, but we ended up opening for 2,500 hours. So that savings is from there, almost $60,000 came from wages, salaries, and benefits. So for 2021.
Okay, perfect. Well, first and foremost, thanks for being here. And sometimes when we have these exercises of cutting, we find out other stuff, and usually it's not to this magnitude, which is great for us, especially in a challenging budget year. But with that, I'll open up the floor to council if there's any questions, or Councilor Taylor.
I think that's a great idea, to get us and see how we compare, because I just see the general differences in cost between us and some of the surrounding communities, and it just indicates to me that there's an expense problem at the Hinton Library, which maybe more information helps with that as well. The other thing that might help with it, and I was thinking about this, is maybe to understand what the public, maybe after we understand what the public thinks about our library's expenses versus other towns, and whether they want to maintain that level of expense or a different level of expense and service for that, because that would be what would guide.
I can only show what we can show to you, for starters, okay? As you guys are the 85% of our budget comes from this town administration as well as our council, right? And that would be the response. The second part of that would be the public would definitely, we ask for public input. Not only that, we do a yearly, to get our funding from the provincial government, we do have to come up with a survey for library services, which we do which we do on a yearly basis, and it's usually have to be filed. Sorry, that's probably my phone going right now, of course. And I put it on vibrate.
I was hoping it wasn't mine.
That's a nice tune.
Okay, sorry about that. It's supposed to put me to sleep, but that doesn't work. Anyways, moving forward, I think that's a great idea. It's something that we do already, and so I believe that we can expand on that as well.
I did have a question at the end of my comments, if I could be, and that was a question that I sent you. That maybe the answer is still the same to the question that we look at the comparison with Edson, but the question I sent you was, it appears that you've chosen not to cut expenses to make up for any of the shortfalls, but rather look at reserves. And that's the approach you took in 2022. Is the approach you're taking in 2023 the same? And I'm not, you face the same situation we do, right? With the town, we look at our reserves, we look at our operating costs, we've got to constantly balance and look at our expenses.
Well, we did something different this year, Taylor, Councillor Taylor, and that is we got an organization review done by a provincial network librarian from the University of Alberta. And she made some recommendations. These are still being voted on as of our February 28th meeting. We just got the results in January, and my board wanted time to review them before voting on them and proceeding forward. Okay, some of the recommendations that she said that we are 2 librarians short, or 2 people short at our library for the amount of work that we do. Okay, so there was Dr. Margaret Long from the University of Alberta, had made many recommendations, which again, until they are voted on by our board, I cannot share fully with you guys, okay? But again, we were trying to, her premise was, for the same money, what can we do to make things run better at the library? I think that's a better question to get an answer for than one saying, can we cut from our expenses to make the library run more efficiency? So again, I think Trevor can probably talk to this a little bit better as he was also part of this meeting as well. But again, I would like to wait for that to be processed by the board before sharing that document with council.
Thank you.
For that. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I want to thank you so much for, that $140,000, that equals or is more than a 1% tax increase. So that money will be very beneficial to us as a town. Another thing, I cannot thank you enough for giving me an opportunity to sit with you and listen to what you had to say. And when we talk about comparables, I just had no idea. When you talked about the county gives Edson, and I don't know if my figure is with me, but the county gives Edson around $176,000.
177, that's correct.
There's 11,000 people living in the county. 4,800 of them go to Edson Museum or library. Here in Hinton, we get 36,000 from the county, and out of those 11,000, about 800 come to our library. So that's big. Another one that really caught my attention is, and I might be saying this wrong, the Regional Library Association. The town of Edson pays that $47,000 to the association. Here in town, you pay it out of your budget.
Yes, that is an in and out. As you already know, I am chairperson of Yellowhead Regional Libraries, and the agreement, the master membership agreement, was actually signed by the town of Hinton and not the Library of Hinton for that expense. But ever since its inception, when it was 25 years ago, well, actually it's 50 years ago, but 25 for that latest MMA, it was moved into the library's expense. But again, after discussing this with both Laura and Hans, both in the same position that they were in, it's an in and out. And so basically what would happen, that doesn't move it from your books whatsoever as town administration or council. It's a matter that still has to be paid. It's just as Councillor Taylor saw this as part of our expenses, which means that comes as a dollar figure per capita, right? Which ends up being, I believe it's $45,000, which again in the town of 10,000 means $4.50 per head, right? So that's what we want to avoid, is to show, as we have to make sure that we're seeing apples to apples. And that will be a later discussion with council. I've already talked with Mayor Michaels about doing exactly this, and as moving forward, I think it'd be beneficial for both parties to look at what we're like, so that there's much more, how can I say, you guys can make better decisions on our behalf as well.
If I could follow up, I think I would be a prime example of how having, sitting down with a counselor with all the hard copies and going over this, the information that a person can walk out of there with is immense. So I just can't thank you enough for that meeting that I was invited to. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Reyes. Councilor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to Councilor Taylor's question, I'd just like to comment, understandably, never want to, take from reserves to run operational, but it was a decision that, as a board and being part of that decision, that, we realized the reserves were more than we needed, and we needed to offset a little bit. And then as went on, efficiencies that we're looking at as a board. So I think we're doing a combination of the two. We're cleaning up the reserves, getting it to a more reasonable level. And then at the same time, looking for efficiencies as well in the operations of our library. So I think it's a twofold. It's not a practice that we're going to continue to make. It's it's just looking at past practices and getting things cleaned up a bit that way, and then what we can do moving forward. And yeah, what this efficiencies review is going to look like, I'm not entirely sure as a board what we are going to see in a budget, what it's going to impact on the budget, but that's what I'm excited to see, or even if it's the same budget, possibly the services increase as well, because that's part of also the conversation, is what can we do to make things more efficient in our libraries for our residents as well. So, and I do appreciate that, Chairman Hank mentioned about, we do have to do a survey every year. We have open houses. I believe we couldn't do that during COVID, but let residents get a chance to come out and make comments and suggestions for the library and things of that nature as well. So it's we try to reach those community members as well that way. So that's all I just wanted to say. Thank you, and thank you to the board for coming tonight.
There's one more thing here. By the way, this is not done lightly by our board. Okay, this was a motion that, again, we can't, put it this way, Laura, myself, Aneo, and Councillor Haas was in a meeting last week about what was Wednesday, and we came up with this. Okay, this we could have hidden, but we didn't, because I know that I believe that reserves are something that you guys will be looking at near the end of the month or early part of next month, and so we could have buried this, just said yes to Mr. Taylor's 20,000 and moved on, but that's not it. Okay, you made us look at what our bottom line was, and instead of and we decided that transparency is the most important. Okay, we do appreciate the value that the money that we do get from our council as well as our administration, and we do as taxpayers want to make sure that they are being used in a wisely fashion, and so this is why we did this.
Thank you for that. Councilor LaBerge.
So what are the reserves set at now, Hank, after this one?
Okay, reserves from Bellamy, we have a printout. Is that the latest one? Or is it?
That is as of 2021 December.
Okay, December 31st of last year, we were at $229,492.08.
So, and this, what is it, the extra 80,000 will come off that number then?
It will, okay, but this does not take into effect the 97,000 that we saved. There was, we have a long-serving employee right now, I believe it was in your package, that moved from short-term to long-term disability. As soon as they moved to long-term disability, they were removed from our budget amount. The problem is we still have to allocate some budget for this person if they do come back. Okay, and so even when it comes to this year, and that's why we're having this discussion with council in a later date of what happens with that money. Okay, we have to still carry it, but in case that person comes back, right? But again, it's looking like ANAO has already stated that we've started to see some savings coming back towards us because of this, because this employee is not with us at this particular moment.
So we're holding a vacant $97,000.
No, that's part of it. Also, what part of this was also closure during COVID, as ANAO described. Did they get this too?
No.
Okay. Okay, maybe I'll get you to explain why we have such a high reserve status for this year.
So from my understanding, the approximately $230,000 that we have in our reserves as of the end of December 2021 did not include. So the $97,000 that we have includes the $16,000 budgeted in our budget to move to the reserve. So the additional cost or the surplus is $80,000. And the $80,000 came from restrictions due to COVID, that we were closed, reduced hours, library operations. So that's actually the surplus that we have of $80,000. And I'm not sure if that $80,000 is included in the $230,000. So that's the reason why board made a decision to move that 80,000 surplus to 2022. Right? So there is no, it's not certain that the board will still have a surplus this year, because the majority of that surplus came from salaries and wages.
Brian, we normally try to move only $16,000 of our budget per year into our reserves. Okay, and that usually covers, as you can see, one of the sheets you'll see in front of you, it shows us what our reserves are used for. And that usually covers what we need to do within our plan of service, which is our strat plan like you guys have as well. Okay.
I mean, I do appreciate the money coming back, but at the end of the day, it is a return of taxpayer dollars that weren't spent. So, I mean, it was the right thing to do. So I do appreciate that, but thank you.
Okay.
Okay, council, Councillor Hawes and Councillor Taylor.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, Councillor Taylor.
How much are you saving us? Like, we'd asked for 20,000.
Okay, so I'm adding another 60 on
if-
top of that.
You're adding another 60.
Yeah.
So basically what we're giving you is even, take that 20 and another 60 less than what we thought we were gonna give.
This sheet should be in your package
Oh, I see.
as of right now, is it?
Yeah,
I believe it is. It'll explain it right for you, okay?
okay, got it.
So,
Yeah, I see the, what you were asking is 446.
yeah.
Okay, we
Okay.
said, good.
Council, anything further?
This is what we asked.
We're asking right now for the new ask for 2022 is 366,186. You see that?
Which is 80,000 less than the
Yes.
previous ask, yes.
Yeah.
So it's 20,000 plus the additional 60.
No, that's appreciated. That'll save almost over 0.5% of tax relief for the citizens.
So I would also like to mention that this reduction is for 2022 alone, right? So, and we've explained the reason. It was because of 2021 surplus that we're having this additional $80,000. I just want that information for council to have that information.
And I think we've experienced this with other partners and user groups, that we have to have these conversations much earlier in the year, September maybe latest, to kind of work together and then find a way on how it impacts our budget, right? And sometimes we're having these conversations. So I appreciate, as other councilors mentioned, finding this money. It helps us. It makes the request lower. And I think we reconvene for 2023 in the next few months, and we discuss our path forward and what that looks like from your perspective on the services you offer, and from a financial perspective of what works for the library, and then how that marries with our budget moving forward. So we appreciate your time, and we will definitely be using that extra found money to help our future conversations later tonight.
Sorry it was so late. One of the things was we rely on Town of Hinton Finance Department to help manage our expenditures and what we spend out. And they were last year was not a good year for Town of Hinton Finance, being shortchanged so much. And so we did not get this number for our reserves until I believe 2 weeks ago. And so that's when the discussion happened, okay? So for this year, we hope to be way ahead of this, Mr. Michaels, and so this should not happen again.
Yeah, thank you for that context. Again, gentlemen, thanks so much, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hanlon.
Sorry, sir, if it's not inappropriate, just a quick question. Thank you to the members of the board. Do you have, I was a bit surprised at the size of the reserve. Do you have a reserve policy that the board has established?
We actually have a policy through, it's called the Library Act and Regulations. And stating that that's one of the issues that we wanted to also deal with the board, with the council. Council, we've had problems accessing our reserves, meaning that we'd have to bring a motion to council to spend our money, which goes against the act and regulations. And so the workaround that Carla Fox did at that time was move $75,000 of our reserves to a non-restrictive one within the town. And we could do it from there and then supplement it as we go through. Okay, so again, that's something we want to discuss with town admin as well as council during our discussions of apples to apples.
Perfect, thank you.
Administratively, Mayor, we'd be happy to meet and discuss how we could align that maybe a little better and assist.
Perfect. Okay, again, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That'll bring us to our action items for this evening. Bylaw 1163, mandatory face coverings. Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to all of council. An item that I chose to kind of push on at the last minute in response to what we have seen, of course, in the direction coming out provincially from Edmonton. I do want to clarify, and I will point to the top of page 30 of 73 in your package. We are looking, based on what happened as of Sunday at midnight, is the province took away the mandatory face covering requirement for children ages 5 to 12. In my haste to prepare this last week, and if we take a look at the top of page 30, you'll see my proposed amendment to the exemption section speaks to sub 4.1.1 reading persons under 12 years of age. That should read persons under 13 years of age. I apologize for the confusion. And so that would be administratively a change we would propose. You do have here two attachments, and you do have the first attachment being the Town of Hinton Mandatory Face Covering Bylaw 1163, which was signed by the mayor and brought in September 2nd, 2021. And then starting on page 39 of your package, what administration is proposing is the updated Mandatory Face Coverings Bylaw number 1169. It is a carbon copy. It is the exact same bylaw, except for that change, as we noted, regarding the age exemption for children. Administration does note and is aware of some of council's comments on this matter, that there is currently planned a rollback of all face covering restrictions within the province of Alberta for the end of February. We'll see. Of course, we've kind of been in and out of COVID and mandatory face covering requirements a couple of times, but that does, as of this afternoon, remain the direction coming from the province on this matter. This would not affect that. This would stay in place unless otherwise directed by council. This would simply be addressing the, correcting the age restriction on the 5 to 12-year-olds, so we don't have a bylaw in conflict with the current provincial direction. Your Worship, happy to answer any questions you may have on this matter.
Thank you, CEO Hanlon. Councilor Race.
Thank you, sir. So to admin, we put this bylaw into effect prior to the province doing it. So.
This, oh, excuse me, sorry, Councilor Race. Yes, this was brought in, it was, I think it was probably anticipating the province doing something, or it was responding some pressures possibly locally, but you're right, it was done before the provincial requirements for mandatory face coverings came into effect.
So, and we did that so we could keep it even if the province decides to end it.
We could, your worship, through you to Councillor Race, to all of council, and you do hear a couple of municipalities talking about the possibility of they may be maintaining their own mandate requirements. Even City of Edmonton's talking about maintaining the QR codes for themselves and the passports within the City of Edmonton. At this point, administration is really just waiting to see what happens with the province, more so at the end of the month. This is brought before council this evening because, as I said, as of midnight Sunday, we now have a bylaw that's more restrictive around children under the age of 13 than the provincial requirements are. And that hasn't really bothered us yesterday or today over at the rec center, but we know come this weekend, we run into a bit of a potential concern that we have in that we've got a bylaw that states one thing, children of this age, versus what the province's requirements may be. And we would like, with the direction of council, to correct that possibly here this evening.
So that, it's really all we're dealing with right now is just that age, that 13 and under.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Race, to all of council, yes, what you see here currently, administration has worked out some language as well, as there was a possible, a council inquiry that I received wondering about the possibility of adding an additional rescinding motion that would allow this bylaw to be rescinded in conjunction with any change from the province of Alberta. So I do have some language that isn't in your bylaw, but we have worked that up after talking about that this afternoon. Again, if that were the will of council. That's anticipating changes towards the end of the month. What you have here, strictly speaking, is trying to deal with what changed Sunday at midnight.
Oh, I do have one, but I'll stand back till.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Taylor.
I just have questions at this point to seek to understand. Certainly in favor of making this consistent. Certainly in favor of making it consistent with the age. And probably even of rescinding this bylaw, because I don't think it helps the town very much. But what would be, if we rescind this bylaw, the way I read this, we need a bylaw to rescind the bylaw? Is that correct? And then if we get a bylaw to rescind the bylaw, we wouldn't actually be rescinding the bylaw until March 1st, which is about the time the province might be rescinding their bylaw. Correct?
Sir, through you to Councillor Taylor, that is correct. So any bylaw of the town of Hinton must be rescinded by the same method. So a bylaw needs a bylaw to rescind.
This is a two-part question, may I? Well, the other way I was thinking to handle that might be smoother, that makes for consistency with the provincial legislation and less work for administration and less work for council, would be to put an amendment to the new bylaw tonight that basically says that this bylaw ceases to be enforced when the province of Alberta rescinds its provincial mask requirements in Alberta. And then automatically, if the province rescinded its provincial mask requirements, this bylaw could be null and void. That would be another way to do it, correct?
Your worship, through you to Councillor Taylor, yes. And actually, that, to your point, sir, that's a bit of the language I worked up today. And administratively, I can support that, and I'll explain why. One is,
you can't.
I can support that. And I like the term null and void. And what I mean by that is if there was language to that effect in here, and I'll read it, and I apologize because you don't have this, but administratively, we thought if you took a look at page 43 of your package, this is the proposed bylaw. And if you took a look at section 8, which is enactment, and you'll see actually 8.1 talks about the provisions and how the Emergency Advisory Committee and myself, we can actually trigger this bylaw when active cases hit 10 or higher. And actually, last week when I looked into this, we were at 39 active cases, so we're far above the 10 anyways. But if we were to add potentially an 8.2 that read as follows. The provisions of this bylaw shall be repealed on the same date and time as the province of Alberta may rescind its mandatory face covering requirements. If we were to do that, it doesn't rescind the bylaw, it simply allows us not to enforce the bylaw. And if, I believe it's fair to say we all want to see COVID in the rear view, and we all want the masking requirements when it's safe to do so, reduced and eventually eliminated. My concern with immediately rescinding this bylaw is if something horrible happened that none of us wants to see happen around COVID, and we're in the middle of something again, the middle of 2022, and we have to do a bylaw again, you're starting from scratch. You have to adopt a new bylaw right from the ground up. Whereas if we had under this enactment section the ability to repeal, it allows it to be repealed and not enforced, but it allows it to be reenacted should you find you need it again later on in this pandemic. So administratively, we would prefer that to the possibility of maybe having to come back to council and to the community and pass another bylaw at some point. Again, I hope that's not the case, and I hope I'm just wrong.
Just a clarifying question. So my idea was to make it section 9.3, and that was my idea, and use wording that the bylaw ceases to be enforced if the province ceases to have one. Your idea is to make it 8.13, which means that we could still have a bylaw in place if the province shuts theirs down, if we have X number of COVID cases in the town. That's what you're proposing, correct?
If I could, sir, to Councillor Taylor, to all the council, I'm actually proposing a way in which we can retain the bylaw in a state where we're not currently enforcing it, but it remains on the books. So not rescinding it. In the event that if things change around COVID-19 and the mandatory face covering requirements, we could enact it again. You do have an enactment clause that says if you're over 10 active cases in Hinton, the CAO can enact it. The Emergency Advisory Committee and the CAO can enact it. Whereas if we found ourselves, and again, I know I'm speaking hypothetically, and I hope I'm not coming across as alarmist because I don't think this is the case, but if we saw things go negatively for us as we move out of COVID, and if we saw the numbers increase and we saw the province kind of slap back as they've threatened to possibly do if the numbers don't go their way, this allows us to still have a bylaw in the books we can utilize without having to craft a new one. Now, that said, we can still just rely on any provincial mandate or provincial requirements, and we don't have to have our own. I hope that helps.
So what I'll do now is I'll go to Councillor LeBairs and Councillor Hawes, and then we'll go back to Councillor Reese and Taylor.
I think it's good that there's a bunch of work to do if you need to put the bylaw back into place. Because I think it's something we should talk about. I actually don't like well, we can just use it whenever we want, or whenever we get 10 cases, or whenever. I think it's important. I think this has been a divisive, shitty issue that citizens have been dealing with for a long time. My preference at this point, I mean, the municipality does not have the capacity to make those medical decisions. And I mean, we spend billions on our medical community and advice, and the right place for this to sit is at the province. And it bothers me that we have a mask bylaw. And I would like us to, it appears though it's coming to an end, and I would very much like to see Councillor Taylor make that motion that this would cease to be a bylaw at the second that the province takes away their mandate. And really, that doesn't have anything, it's not a political, and I mean, I don't mean that from a party perspective, but from a, and I hear it all the time in here about staying in our lanes. I think this sort of puts us in the right lane. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor LeBairs. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess the one thing I'm struggling a little bit with is because, and I guess this, and maybe it's just, but we currently have it's 10 cases, and as you stated already, we have 39 cases in our community. It seems to contradict itself a little bit, so that's where I'm struggling with that a little bit, because we've got a bylaw that says 10, we're at 39, but then we put in there that, but if the province pulls it, then this is null and void again, but technically we're in contradiction to, the numbers that we've already placed in here. So I guess that's where I'm struggling a little bit with it. I'm of the mind, I mean, personally, where I'm at is we change the names, keep it until the province is done with it, and then, move forward from there. And if it means putting it into here, if there is a reasonable way of doing that, I'm okay with that. I'm with Councillor Labarge. I think we need to, it boils down to an enforcement thing as well. If we are the only persons that are holding on to this, it becomes confusing in the province if some have it and some don't, and then we have to enforce it, and we just don't have the capability of doing that at this point. So those are just some of my thoughts, but it is that number thing that's really bugging me a little bit there. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. I think it's our duty now to decide, do we want to amend this and start making amendments to the draft, or begin the process to really strip it down and rescind this motion and essentially have an empty bylaw that doesn't have much into it, so it doesn't necessarily exist. I don't love the idea that it could only be replaced by another bylaw, but that other bylaw would essentially have nothing in it, or would speak to it that council would only consider through a motion of council the enactment of a bylaw or begin something like it was a bit of a curveball that we can't just get rid of this in its entirety. That's my goal, but if not, I think we go through the process today to amend the draft one. One specific one that I believe we should do is change section 8, the enactment, and the enactment should no longer be the town manager, it should be by a motion of council. So in the future, if there is a need for a mask mandate, that the reenactment of it comes to council, that no town manager in the future could just start it with 10 plus cases. To me, at least where I stand, we are going past this, and I want the language to be extremely difficult to reenact it. So I would support changing section 8 and add the section that Councillor Taylor spoke to that says the moment that the province lifts their mandate, this is no longer enacted or active also. And those are two caveats within it that then I believe needs a third one, meaning to reenact it. Again, it comes to council for us to go through that process to amend it and go through the process of having this bylaw. But to me, I think we have to start focusing on specific amendments of the draft one and kind of reconvene in 2 weeks of the work we do today. Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I'm prepared to make my motion. And again, I'd rather rescind it right now, but I am understanding rescinding it now is it's going to take 2 weeks anyways. So, but I think this makes us consistent. So my motion would be what I wrote to you. It's not what you suggest, because I don't like what you suggested. I mean, thank you for trying. God bless you. But that we add, and I like what the mayor said as well, that but I mean, frankly, based on what you said, I mean, after March 1st, this might not even be, what you said might not even be moot, right? So my motion, my amendment to add to the bylaw would be to add a section 9.3. I thought that would be the place for it. That's under the effective date section. And I look to you if this is the precise wording or not, Paul.
Yes, sir.
But this bylaw ceases to be enforced when the province of Alberta rescinds its provincial mask requirements in Alberta. So if we don't have one, if they get rid of it, that's the intent there. And doing that again for a few reasons. So maybe we'll wait till it gets up there, I guess.
Okay.
Is it done? Oh, yeah.
They're not ceasing enforcement.
Right. This bylaw ceases to exist would be better wording than ceases to be enforced.
Or is automatically rescinded.
Yeah, this bylaw is automatically rescinded.
Share that with CEO Hamlet.
So this is just what we were saying earlier, that this is now happening in the iCompass program. So we'll put that up here in a moment, then you'll see it. And we can then wordsmith it and make sure it's exactly correct for the council Taylor.
Yeah, I've already found a mistake in my writing. So if you, oh, that's so small. Is that for, that's not for old people to see, is it? Oh, I can't see it.
I think we can probably make.
Did I say that out loud?
There we go. Beautiful.
The provisions. I think that covers it. I think that's better than the wording I had, yes. The idea is that we don't have one if they say there's no provincial mandating the face covering rule.
That's what we're trying to
We
put
have
in.
nothing, yeah, that's good.
And if I could, sir, just very briefly to you, to all the council, this is more, so it allows our enforcement staff who may get pressured by certain individuals in the community who want to see our bylaw enforced. At least this now, we can be consistent with the provincial requirements and not be in a conflict position, and just honestly to continue just getting people more frayed and on edge in this way we're consistent.
And yeah, again, this ensures consistency with provincial legislations. And I think it's going to save council and administration further work in like a week and a half. So we're not going to be sitting here talking about this again.
If I could, sir, through you to Councillor Taylor, to all the council, we'll still have to bring a rescinding bylaw at a future date and just rescind it. And that's just a matter of housekeeping. Now, some municipalities, they end up rescinding bylaws that have been sitting around for 20 years and just lost and ignored. We won't do that with this, but when the time is right, we'll bring it back with a rescinding bylaw. And I heard the notion of an empty bylaw. It won't even be an empty bylaw. The rescinding bylaw makes it's off the books. It's gone. It's no longer anything that can be enforced by the town of Hinton. Is that clear? Sorry.
No, it's not clear. Why would you have to do that if I have a termination clause that says it ceases to exist when the
So if I may, Councillor Taylor, and this is why I spoke to the enactment part, we have two choices. We could put the language within this current bylaw to make it more stringent for it to occur again, but the bylaw would still be in place for the town of Hinton with easier mechanisms. If we rescind it completely, we would then have to go through the 3 readings and start over a brand new bylaw through that process. So that's my understanding, that if we take this angle, we're maintaining it, it stops it. I believe there'll be another following amendment to this draft under Section 8 to talk about it restarting. So you're correct. Once the province stops it, it won't be effective, but it'll still be existing, and we can then reenact it once we need it. But again, I stress that prior, if there's an appetite to completely rescind it, we can go towards that path to completely rescinding this if we want. So there's a dilemma there of which path we choose to go forward. Councilor Barry?
Maybe a friendly amendment to
Please.
the motion. Uh, Provision shall no longer exist. I guess, and you tell me, CO Hanlon, what the right word is, but I'm thinking here, and administration would deliver to council a rescinding bylaw the first regular meeting following such a change.
Thank you, sir. I think that would be something we could put in again that recognizes, unfortunately, just the bureaucratic aspect of the rescinding bylaw. And we could, so right now we're saying the provisions of this bylaw shall no longer exist as of the same date and time as the province of Alberta may choose to rescind its mandatory face covering requirements, comma, and administration shall return to the next regularly scheduled council meeting with a rescinding bylaw.
Is that friendly enough?
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you.
Councilor Taylor, are you okay with that friendly amendment?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor and LaBerge. Council, we have an amended motion on the floor. If you could please have a look, and with that, I'll go to Councilor Race.
I would like this split, please,
Okay, there's a request to split this.
from and administration shall. And if I may speak to that, we're talking two big things here. I agree with the first motion, but the second one, rescinding it, we're starting from scratch if we need it again. And that's not something I want to do. And I totally understand going with what the province is saying. I think we're going to see a day where it's going to be personal preference wearing a mask. And I just hope that people respect whether you're wearing a mask, I'm wearing a mask. Let's just respect what each other is doing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Council will be dealing with the second part, the additional friendly amendment part. And if that is passed, that'll be joined to the first part. So the first motion will be I'm not sure where it is. And administration shall return. So we'll be dealing with the second part. And administration shall return to the next regular scheduled council meeting with a rescinding bylaw. Council, how do we deal with that one first? Because if that is passed, then it goes to the main
Okay.
motion together. Administration, any comments? I don't want to speak ahead, but that was my understanding of the order from the last time we did a split motion was the second part, but.
Sir, I believe you've captured it. If the splitting, if the last half, the split, so to speak, is not carried, then you can consider the entire after that.
Right. I'll be speaking in favor of it. To me, I really believe this is nearing the end. And twice we passed a bylaw because of the inaction of the provincial government. Both times, even though the second time was one day. And if we go down this path again in the future, I'd like to holistically look at creating a bylaw. I think that's more in line with what the province is doing. This has been overly challenging. There's been just complications of any small change, then we're stuck in a situation to spend multiple meetings. I just don't like the way the logistics work for our bylaw. So if we're going to go down this path, I would like to spend a couple of meetings looking at bringing it forward. So for me, I'll support the second part here. Council? Seeing no one, I'll call the question. And administration shall return to the next regularly scheduled council meeting with a rescinding bylaw. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. That'll bring us to our other section. Council, the entire motion is on the floor. Any further debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question. The provisions of this bylaw shall no longer exist as the same date and time as the province of Alberta may choose to rescind its mandatory face covering requirements, and administration shall return to the next regularly scheduled council meeting with a rescinding bylaw. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, any other changes to the draft?
I think we should also make the other change regarding the age limit. How do we do that? Like,
Well, now now council needs to consider the bylaw as amended for 3 readings, including a unanimous consensus for third. So you have to now give it first reading, second reading, third reading. So you've now made amendments to the proposed bylaw, and now it's a chance to proceed. So I apologize. Let's take a look. If we took a look at on page 31 of your agenda package, you'll see option 1, and the first option being that council provide first reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw to amend section 4.1.1 of mandatory face coverings bylaw 1163 as shown in attachment 2. I would suggest that we now proceed with the following, and I'd be looking for council consensus on this, that council provides first reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face covering bylaw as presented and amended this meeting and as shown in attachment 2.
Councilor Taylor.
yeah, great. But you had told us earlier that the amendment attachment 2 has the 12 and under age, and you had told us that it should say 13 and under.
Correct. So that would include, sorry, that would be included in the amendments. So the amendments we're talking about here is what we've added to section 9, so 9.3, and the age, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Council, any appetite to put first reading? Councilor Hawes.
Yeah, I wish I could remember everything you said, but the council provide first reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw as presented and amended. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. As presented and amended as shown in attachment 2. Do we need the section 4.1 in there too?
Actually, you know what? Sorry. So, Dan, I don't think we need the reference to 1163 now. It's a new bylaw, so we're just gonna. Yeah, so as presented and amended in attachment 2, this meeting and as shown in attachment 2.
Okay.
Sir, administratively, that's what I believe council can be taking a look at for first reading.
If I can do that again. All right, so I'd like to move that council provide first reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw as presented and amended in this meeting. Just need it in there, Jen, in this meeting and as shown in attachment 2.
Paul?
Hello, is this Heather?
It is. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't figure out how to put my hand up on this screen. Introduce myself, Heather Thompson. I'm contracting to the town to help in the Legislative Services Department. And a suggestion, Paul, I don't think you should refer to attachment 2 at all.
Okay.
Just a suggestion. Attachment 2 is incorrect. I would just refer to the sections 4.11 and section 9.3 being added. Again, just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, council, thank you, Heather. Jen's going to take a look at that, and then we'll bring it back up for Councillor Haas to take a look at for first reading.
9.3. I don't think so.
Mayor, I believe administration is hopefully fairly. Heather, just if you need to chime in, but
Unfortunately, I can't see the motion on my screen. So
I believe that Councillor Haas is going to read that into the record now.
great.
I think we have to add the words and add the section 4.3 or 9.3. There is a
Councillor Hawes.
Yeah. Council provides. Okay, as long as administration's comfortable with what the 4.1.1 is referring to, that we don't need to specifically name it in there.
You're good.
And that there isn't a section 9.3, we're adding it. Do we need to add or any verbiage that needs there, or?
We can say, and the addition of section.
Okay, and the addition of.
Section 9.3.
As presented and amended in this meeting. Okay. All right, so I'll read it out now, and then Heather can hear it. So the council provide first reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw with amendments to section 4.1.1 and the addition of section 9.3 presented and amended in this meeting.
Council, we have a updated motion. Any further debate or questions as administration is looking? Councillor Race?
Is the new legislative person fine with this?
Administration?
Heather, just a question of council. Are you happy with that motion?
Very happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't need to speak to it, but thank you.
Okay, council, any further debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council provide first reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw with amendments to section 4.1.1 and the addition of section 9.3 as presented and amended in this meeting. Council, all those in favor? That's passed. Council, any further appetite? Councilor Race?
I'd like to make do a second reading, please, but I will need that information.
We're just going to get that ready for you,
Okay.
Councilor Race. Apologies for the.
To simplify, and I did have my hand up, but it's probably hard for Mayor Michaels to see that. So if I could interrupt to make this a little bit easier for Jen on that side.
Absolutely.
All that's required is that council provide second reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw, period. That's it.
So it's adequately clarified in the first reading motion?
Exactly.
That's it. Okay, I'd like to move that council provide second reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Council, we have second reading on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, is there appetite for unanimous consent? Third reading. Councilor Hawes?
I do, but I have one question to administration before I make it, and it's not to do with the bylaw, it's technology wise. Are the residents that are viewing this seeing that motion?
No.
Okay.
No, and so.
They're hearing it when you read it and call it a question, so.
Okay, I was just clarifying. Okay, so I would like to move that council provide unanimous consent to proceed with bylaw, unanimous consent to proceed to third reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw on this date. Thank you.
Council, we have a motion on the floor for unanimous consent that would bring us to third reading. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council provide unanimous consent to proceed to third reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw on this date. Council, all those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Council? Appetite for third reading? Councilor Hawes?
I'd like to move that council provide third reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face coverings bylaw. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor for third reading. Any debate or questions? I'll obviously be speaking in favor of this. I want to thank administration and council for navigating through this tonight. I actually thought it was going to be a bit more challenging, and we got to a point where I think we're aligning ourselves with the province and we're ridding ourselves of this once the province rids itself of theirs, and we get to move forward, whatever the future looks like, but then rebuild something that's adequate and I think appropriate for the upcoming circumstances or life that we will see further in 2022, 2023, et cetera. Councilor Hawes?
Yeah, and I'm of course going to be in favor of this. I do want to highlight though what Councilor Ray said, that despite not having a bylaw, if residents choose, please, whether you want to wear a mask or don't, just to respect one another, moving on in the future. It doesn't mean that you have to have a bylaw to wear a mask. And I think where we're headed potentially, at least for the number of months coming forward, to see how things play out. But other than that, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Council? Seeing no one, I'll call the question that council provide third reading of bylaw 1169, updated mandatory face covering bylaw. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? CEO Hanlon? Oh, council? With that, I'm going to call a 6-minute recess and we'll reconvene before we go into our operating budget. Thank you. You good? Recovery before I move on. Seeing, oh, Councillor Taylor.
Nate, I request that our legislative services person do a double check on that, having to have a termination clause and then having to do a rescinding bylaw. It just doesn't seem right to me.
Sir, we administratively, we will take this on and I'll have Heather look into that and we'll report back to council.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Council, anything further? Seeing none, that'll bring us to our second action item for this evening, 2022 operating budget and 2023 to 2025 plan approval. Interim CAO Hanlon.
Thank you, sir. Through you to all of council. I am on page 45 of tonight's agenda package. This is the 2022 Town of Hinton operating budget and the 2023 to 2025 plan approval item. The recommended action is that council approve the 2022 operating budget and 2023 to 2025 operating plan as presented February 1st, 2022, incorporating all budget amendments as detailed in attachment 1. And I'll add as discussed here tonight, but we will get to that discussion. In terms of background, sir, we've got in September, the town of Hinton retained, in September 2021, the town of Hinton retained Robert Osmond of ARO Consulting Partners to complete a budget process for the 2022 operating and capital budgets and the associated planning and coordination with staff. On January 14th and 15th of this year, Mr. Osmond facilitated an operating budget deliberation session where council discussed and considered the draft operating budget and 2023 to 2025 operating plan. This finalized budget was then presented to council on February 1st, 2022, and attachments 2 and 3 of your agenda package, at which time council passed the following 3 motions related to the proposed 2022 operating budget. MD 2455 to direct administration to place $3,133,000 into reserves in 2022. Bit of explanation, this motion required administration to identify $30,000 which could be reallocated from the 2022 operating baseline budget to the reserves accounts, which would then total $3,133,000 contribution in 2022 and fulfill this motion of council. The second motion was MD 2457, that council direct administration to increase the funding to the Hinton Historical Society to $70,000. In essence, this motion required the reallocation of an additional $25,000 to increase funding to the museum to a net $70,000 contribution as per the confirmation of MD 2459, which is below, and we'll get to that, which seeks an initial reallocation of $325,000 out of the proposed 2022 operational baseline budget. The proposed amendments that administration brings forward tonight to the 2022 operating baseline budget to achieve the reallocation we are proposing of $325,772.43 are summarized in the following analysis section and detailed in attachment 1. And just to clarify, this is administration's attempt to meet the direction of council in both of those motions. As I mentioned earlier, there is a third motion, that is motion MD 2459, that council direct administration to find $275,000 in addition to the $325,000 quoted earlier from the base operating budget and bring back any service level implications to council. This motion seeks a reduction of $275,000 to the proposed 2022 operating baseline budget. in addition to the initial $325,000, as was just discussed. Administration cannot discuss these reductions in open session, and at the appropriate time, administration is suggesting after the consideration of the first $325,000, administration will request that council consider a motion to move in camera per section 17 of the FOIP Act to discuss personnel matters. Into the analysis section. As per the first two motions of council, administration presents possible amendments to the proposed 2022 baseline operating budget. As summarized below and detailed in attachment 1 to realize an allocation of $325,200, excuse me. My apologies, that should read $325,772.43 for the consideration of council. There are potentially hundreds of GL codes in each functional area, and so reallocations are only shown for affected GL codes from each functional area. And as you'll see in development and infrastructure, they've reduced or proposed to reduce over 60 GL codes to get to the savings in that department, but we'll go through there. The table that council sees on page 46 is a brief summary of that first attachment 1, where you get into the actual GL accounts and greater detail on each of those. So I will take you, and that first proposed reduction comes out of the council area and is in the areas of travel, honorarium, accommodation, and memberships. Did take a look at this, and we felt, and in fairness to the HR department, when they pulled this together, they did it entirely consistent with council's policy on remuneration and travel and training, but it is very high. And so it was budgeted at $275,875. Taking a look at the 3-year historical averages and what typically has been seen in terms of honorarium and accommodation and travel for council, we felt that that could be reduced to $205,500, which exceeds the 3-year average and should reflect us moving out of COVID in 2022, and would see a reallocation of $70,375.43. In the CAO area, excuse me, we have a budget of, this is a partial budget, I should clarify, a partial budget of $85,872.32. And that is in the recruitment, benefits, and travel area. And it's a bit odd because what I am proposing is adding the $44,000, as there is a possibility for a CAO recruitment in the coming year. And but with that, there's also additional reductions in travel and benefits. And I have proposed those, and I believe those reductions are consistent with my contract with you. And so it's not a matter that should concern council, but you do see an increase here as we fund the CAO recruitment. In the health and safety area, we've been able to delay some software implementation and realize a savings of $16,990. In human resources, we believe we can reduce the legal fees by $50,000 in the coming year, and that's reflected here. Recreation and administration, some reductions in advertising, training, and promotions. You see a $3,806 reduction. As we heard earlier in our second delegation with the library, we saw, the third delegation with the library, we saw, as per the motion of the library board, a savings of $60,000. Just to clarify, this is in addition to the $20,000, which was an earlier council motion. In the strategic services area, we see reductions or proposed reductions in overtime, travel, training, and promotions, which translates to a savings of $12,600. Winston and Debbie did some great work in the development and infrastructure area. And as I said, in a very detailed analysis of their budget and proposing reductions in over 60 GL codes, they've been able to return or reallocate $138,670 out of their budget. In the community services area, we were able to reduce overtime in certain areas by $5,081. So we see with the proposals on these tables and with greater details in your first attachment, a possible or proposed reallocation or savings of $325,772.43. And sir, that would be the transfer for the $300,000 into reserves and the additional monies for the Hinton Historical Society. I think with that, sir, I probably need to allow some questions if necessary, and certainly happy to move between the table or attachment 1 of your report.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Councillor Taylor.
This infrastructure 60 GL code thing, I don't quite understand that. Like, that's 138,000. What's that really mean? What?
So there is a, sir, through you to Councillor Taylor. There are hundreds of GL codes, different GL codes in that area, and so they actually took a look. If the way it was presented to me was, if you were running a oil change shop, if you reduced your oil filters, you had to make a corresponding reduction in your oil because you're doing fewer oil changes.
Yeah.
And so they took a look, and so in certain areas where they were proposing reductions, that would impact other GL areas, so they had to make corresponding reductions in those areas. So they have proposed to reduce over 60 GL codes, so separate GL codes throughout their department, to total $138,000. So there had been a councillor inquiry last week, which I hopefully respectfully answered, but the concern administration would have to get into those lines and lines and lines of GL codes and just start pulling money out of the budget. I wouldn't know, and with all due respect to council, I don't believe you would know the implications on the other GL codes and how they're all related. So Winston and Debbie and their staff did a lot of work in that area, excuse me, to make sure that any reductions in one area weren't adversely affecting the ability to continue on operations in other areas. I hope that helps.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question I have for admin is, it shows that contracted services sits at around $4 million. Are any of those contracted services people who could have a seat at one of our desks? So are we paying somebody, are we contracting out, whereas we could actually hire that person and they could work for us?
Councillor Race, through you to all of council, that is a terrific question. And unfortunately, I can't tell you a month in specific to the town of Hinton an answer to that. I can share with you from my experience in other communities that often contracted services tend to be services that you're doing one time in a year, or there's sometimes services that you do and do regularly, but it is less expensive to contract the provision of those services than to have an employee there 365 days a year. And so you contract it out, even if it might mean that you're paying a higher amount. You're paying a higher amount, say, for 6 weeks of service over a 52-week period, and you don't then have that staff member, the costs, the benefits, and so forth. So I apologize. I believe that's consistent here with the town of Hinton. And I'm just looking, is there anybody wanting to help me? Anybody with us, or who wants to speak to that? Well, I'm just actually, I guess, and sorry, council, I'm not entirely sure who's with us here right now remotely. So I guess any of my team here, if anybody would like to speak, because Councillor Race quite rightly points out it's a fairly large budget line item, but in our contracted services every year, I believe if anybody would like to speak to what those typically are and why those are probably better done on a contract basis rather than in an employment relationship.
Could I? And, I realize that it could be machinery, it could be, consulting, could be a lot of things. It just seems like a heck of a lot of money.
So I don't have anybody
No, that's good.
stepping up, but I think it's probably fair to say that, for the most part, we're delivering in contracted services. We're delivering services that are more economically delivered that way versus having employed staff doing the same work.
Council? Councilor Taylor?
I'd like to say I appreciate the effort that administration has done in coming up with this this amount. Thank you very much. I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Council, we have a few options. If we seem content with the 325, we can go into closed sessions to have a conversation regarding the other elements of this, or anything else council wishes to do. Councilor LeBert?
And this goes to CEO Hanlon, is a couple of the questions, the responses, I'd just like some clarity.
Yes, sir.
I went back and had a look at my notes as it related to the ATE, and there was some suggestion that once we had taken all of our unpaid fines, that we could be looking at negative revenue for 2021. And we continue to hold a substantial amount. I guess, first of all, is that in fact the case? That's the note that I had written in the presentation. But we're still carrying here an ATE revenue of $310,000. So that's a big difference. If we went from, and the number I have written down for whatever reasons is a negative $153,000. So I would like some clarity on that, because that is a big difference.
Thank you, sir. If I could, Mayor, through you to Councilor Labarge, to all of council, I'm going to ask Mac to join us. And Mac, I believe you heard Councilor Labarge. His questions around, and you and I had a bit of discussion last week on this, our ATE revenues, our RCMP revenues, and our CPO revenues, and we're not budgeting the same sorts of revenues we've done in past years for ATE, but can you share with us kind of where we came up with our revenue numbers for this coming year for ATE, RCMP, and CPO services?
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Through the chair to Councilor LeBerge, the revenue that is quoted there for ATE, I think for clarity, there's only $200,000 of that is representative of the ATE revenue, which is a reduction from previous years. The RCMP revenue from fines is budgeted this year at $50,000, and the bylaw, or our CPOs, is budgeted at $60,000, and that would total the $310,000 in revenue. It's not all ATE.
Councilor LeBert?
Yeah, I'm completely comfortable with the bylaw and the RCMP. My question was, and my understanding from an earlier presentation was, unpaid tickets, the town is 100% on the hook for unpaid tickets. Told at a previous meeting that those unpaid tickets could eclipse the revenue. And so that's where my concern comes in, Mac. We can ticket people, but what I was told is they're not paying them.
So I guess for clarity, Mac, based with what Councilor LeBert said, we're still anticipating $17,000 of net revenue from photo radar each month, which would be about the $200,000 on top of the other 110. That's the analysis and the projection for 2022 is we're going to collect about $17,000 a month after all that.
Through the chair, that is correct, Your Worship. We anticipate that amount. There's no guarantee. The problem with automatic traffic enforcement, in my view, is when out-of-province tickets are issued, which is common in Hinton, They do not go to collections the same as they do in the province of Alberta, people that are licensed in the province of Alberta. So there is no method to follow up on those tickets, whereas the tickets that are with people that have Alberta license plates, if they go unpaid, they won't be able to register their vehicle the next day until those tickets are paid. The revenue will come to the town of Strathmore, but it is delayed.
Well, if I could, I hope it comes to the town of Hinton as opposed to the town of Strathmore, but.
Oh, did I'm sorry. A past life, I'm sorry.
That's just me, I'm selfish that way. But if you could, Mac, I think to Councillor Labarge's question, is there a financial liability to the town of Hinton on unpaid ATE tickets?
Yes, there is. Thank you for that question. There is. We've had in previous years had to cover bad debt from reserves.
Councillor LeBerge?
Thank you, sir.
I'm good with that. I'll accept it at that level. I do have some other questions, so I'll go into.
Thank you, Councillor LeBerge. Councillor Taylor?
Well, previously I had sent you a question about early February that from my time on council before, typically the estimates that administration makes for income from supplementary tax and expected new construction is quite conservative. Is that a possibility for some revenue to make less conservative estimates there, or is that appropriate?
Through you, sir, to Councillor Taylor, to all the council, that is a possible revenue source, and thank you. We did discuss it. There's a bit of, you do have to be somewhat cautious on the supplementary, and there is a bit of uncertainty about the actual valuation. So for instance, on the Bhutan lands and what those will actually net in terms of revenue, given the intention of affordable housing. So Ruth did have some discussions with the auditor, and we believe that number remains the same, not too low. We don't believe it's too far out of line with what we can expect this year on the supplemental.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor LeBerge?
My next question has to do with the auditor, and I got something back that said that I must be misunderstanding, and the $30,000 savings was from last year. But again, I go back to our budget meeting on the 14th of January, well, the 15th of January, I guess. And the business case for the accounting manager, one of the justifications for the accounting manager is, it says right here, new auditor saves $30,000 per year, that's page 48 of 122 of the budget presentation. But in here, we're actually talking about budgeting a $16,000 increase. That's a difference of 46 grand. So I don't, the two sources of information seem out of line.
Through you, sir, to Councillor Labarge, and I do apologize. I was just checking the queue to see if I had somebody here from finance, but they're not currently joining us. I believe in the response I forwarded to you last week, and I'm trying to remember what they had said, but I believe historically the town has not always captured all of the true accounting costs associated with each year's audit. And so the true cost was actually substantially higher than what was reported. And now with the new auditing contract, I believe the intent is to ensure that the correct cost of all auditing is captured, and that you're not going to have a $50,000 annual fee for your audit, but $40,000 reported elsewhere as overtime and so forth. I believe that is the intent. And so that's my understanding, and I apologize. Beyond that, I'll have to get better clarification from my staff.
Councillor LeBerge?
Okay, sure. So there's other costs. So there's a $30,000 savings as it relates to the auditor, but there's $46,000 worth of other costs in putting the audit together so that there's actually a $16,000 increase in the audit? Is that what's happening?
Sir, through you to Council Labarge, to all the council, I believe it's increasing on one side with the 16,000, but a reduction on the other with overtime and other costs that have been reported elsewhere in the past. So what corporate services had been indicating was there'd be a net savings to the town each year with the new auditor.
So what we'll do, I guess we'll leave that with Mr. Hanlon, because I share the same concern that it would be a net loss that we're 16 or
46
16.
grand.
Yeah. With that, I'll go to Councillor Race for the moment.
Thank you, sir. You know what, we're having a really important discussion tonight about our operating budget, eh? Making a determination if we're gonna pass it or not tonight. And we have no corporate services people to answer. And I say this respectfully to you, sir.
Yes.
There are questions for finance and we have nobody here to answer them. So I'm thinking, you had said earlier, you would want to have a closed session meeting to discuss something after we finalize this. I would propose having that meeting, closed session, prior to further discussion on this, and that might give corporate services time to get on board here tonight.
Certainly, sir, and through Councilor Race and through the mayor to all the council, I apologize. I had expected to have somebody here with me. We can reach out, and I'm not going to make any excuses. I do know that there's a bit of a family situation, so possibly that's affected her involvement here, but we can reach out and try to make sure she's here to join us and can answer some of these questions that I'm obviously struggling a little bit with. And I'll have no concerns and certainly able to speak in camera on those items, and we can reach out and try to have her join us for a little later this evening.
Councillor Race?
Yeah, I would certainly would like to move that we go in camera.
Okay, council, we have a direction on the floor to go into closed session. Any debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? And we will reconvene. Hello, everyone. I'd like to reconvene this meeting at 8 o'clock. I have Councillor Hawes.
I'd like to make a motion to extend, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a motion to extend the meeting past 4 hours. Any debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, any direction or questions? Councillor Hawes.
I'd like to make the motion that we postpone the budget, the 2022 operating budget and 2023, 2025 plan approval to the next committee of the whole, February 22nd.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes.
I can speak to it?
Yeah.
So without going into great detail, but there is some information that I believe council and the CEO, interim CEO Hanlon can share with us that will put some light on things. So I look forward to seeing that next week.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. Would it not be March 1st would be our next meeting?
I'll double check with the administration. Do we have a committee of the whole meeting for February 22nd?
Sir, we do.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. My apologies.
I perhaps anticipating Councillor Race's comment, it would be an information discussion next Tuesday and not an ability to pass or adopt the budget. That would still have to come to council on the 1st of March.
Okay, and to clarify, so the motion can stand as it is, doesn't need any amendments to the wording of it?
It can stand the way it is, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes and Councillor Race and CEO Hanlon. I'll just wait for it to show up on the board. In the meantime, I'll be speaking in favor of it. For anyone who's watching, I think it's we're elected to go through this budget is as detailed as we can and to really make sure that every allocation or every decision we want to make moving forward for 2022 is represented extremely well. So I want to thank admin and council for their continued work on this budget in order to get it to the point where we feel comfortable passing it. Councillor Hawes?
To add, just to also, I do, and I know Councillor Taylor alluded to this earlier, but I do definitely commend administration for the work that they did do on that $325,000 and finding that. And this is, I think this motion and this delay is nothing to, in disrespect to, it's just for council to understand some things better. So I think, just to mention, to say that, because the administration has worked hard the last 2 weeks to do what they did. So I really do appreciate that. And I think we as council do as well. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Hawes, is the wording correct for you?
So I guess if I may, to CEO Hanlon, that word approval in there, I was just taking what was the title of this. Is that?
If Councilor Hawes, if you would, thank you, I would suggest removing approval.
Okay, I'll just put the plan, so we could remove approval. I appreciate that. I just, after I reading it, I realized, plan to the, perfect. That's captured, I think, what we need. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any further debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question to postpone the 2022 operating budget in 2023 to 25 plan to the committee of the whole meeting on February 22nd, 2022. Council, all those in favor? Passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Seeing none, that'll bring us to our COVID-19 Resiliency Support Program Grant Redeployment. CEO Hanlon.
Thank you, sir. Just before I hand this one off to my team, anybody from corporate services that had joined us to discuss the budget, my apologies that we missed you earlier. Please feel free to join us next meeting. But I think the balance of the agenda, we're okay now. Thank you. With this, Council, we are on pages 60 to 63 of your agenda package. And Mr. Kovacs, are you with us?
I am, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure why my camera isn't working. CEO Hanlon, I apologize for that.
That's quite all right, sorry. But if you wish, Council's with us. We are dealing with the COVID-19 Resiliency Support Program Grant Redeployment. There is a recommended action, and I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, to take Council and I through that item. Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Thank you.
CEO, interim CEO Hanlon through to Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure this evening to bring to you the recommended action that Council direct administration to redeploy the remaining COVID-19 Resiliency Support Program grant fund of approximately $60,000 to support a destination management organization for approximately $60,000 and to offset the cost of the additional request for $30,000 to provide visitor services in the peak summer season as requested by the Hinton and District Chamber of Commerce. We saw this come to Council at the previous meeting, and the motion that was originally presented, or the recommended action, was amended, and this is bringing back those changes for approval.
Are you done, Mr. Kovacs?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Council, Councillor Taylor.
Earlier this evening, we had a representative from the Valley Business District request $2,000 for business signage on the highway. Does this $60,000 COVID resiliency support grant fund, does that, would that $2,000 be eligible to be spent on that project?
Administration?
Mayor Michaels through to Councillor Taylor. It is not the direct intent of these funds as identified previously to be spent for that particular purpose. The track record or the history on this particular resiliency fund was the result of monies that were provided approximately a year ago. There was $100,000 provided to the COVID resiliency, and COVID resiliency then was identified as providing small business grants and $30,000 worth of marketing, cooperative or collaborative marketing. And that $30,000 for collaborative marketing was identified as a contract that was to be delivered by the Chamber of Commerce for community marketing. So in effect, there is nothing that specifically says that this money should be identified for highway signage.
Maybe I asked the wrong question. Can I put a motion forward to spend this money on highway signage for $2,000? Is there anything stop me from doing that?
Administration?
Scott, if I could, to council's inquiry, I do appreciate the splitting of the approximately $60,000 into two amounts of $30,000, one being to support a destination management organization and the other to offset the cost of visitor services in peak summer season. I think the question is, could we find funding out of this $60,000 in the amount of $2,000?
Interim CEO Hanlon through to Councillor Taylor. It is at the will of council to do that. I am not in my capacity seeing that the monies are specified for that. I'm also not seeing that the monies weren't specified to not do that, but based on the direction of the motion and the previous directions, I see nothing that is allowing us or barring us from doing what you've suggested, simply because there's no conditions that say we can't.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Mr. Kovac. Councillor Taylor?
Maybe if there's other questions, otherwise I'll let other people have a chance first.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Hawes?
Just a clarifying question, and it may just be misspoken, Mr. Hanlon, but isn't it $60,000 current? There's $90,000 in total under this motion. 60 is going to the destination management organization and 30,000 to the District Chamber of Commerce, just to clarify.
Administration?
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. That is correct.
Okay.
The total is 90,000 broken down as explained by Councillor Hawes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Point of interest, CEO Hanlon, the remaining funds are actually only $60,000 out of the original amount of money that we received. We have already given $30,000 to a contract for the Chamber of Commerce to provide the collaborative marketing. And then we had the $60,000 left over as a result of monies that were used, small monies that were used for the grant for the $70,000. So the remaining monies that we are speaking of are actually a total of $60,000 remaining, and $30,000 is suggested to go to support the destination management organization, and $30,000 is suggested to go to the Chamber of Commerce for to offset their request for the $30,000 for visitor services in peak summer season.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Kovac. Councillor Taylor?
So 30,000, 60,000 is already gone to, this is an additional 30,000 for the DMO, and there's 30,000 that's already gone to the DMO to help them get organized out of the 90,000. Is that what I just, no.
So if I can paraphrase, 30,000 remains to give to the DMO and 30,000 is to offset the chamber costs. So we're dealing specifically with the remainder. In total is 60,000 in those two categories. So if there was appetite for your request of the 2,000, you would have to pick one of the two areas, 30,000 or 30,000, or whichever one, and deduct from there. But that is the math that's remaining, 60,000 remaining total.
No, I know that. My question is that that 30, there used to be 90. 30 of the 90 has already gone towards the DMO?
Not the DMO. Mr. Kovac, I think, indicated it was through the chamber and marketing.
Oh, the marketing, the Explorer.
That is.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yes.
Sure.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I think that request we got from the Lower Valley Business District was important. And I'd like to put a motion forward to see if you would support it. That the council direct administration to redeploy $2,000 of the COVID-19 resiliency support program to pay for the signage for the Lower Valley Business District along the highway. 1,000 each to come from each of these.
Wait, so for clarity, it'll be 1,000 from each.
Yes, please. Maybe. The council direct administration to redeploy $2,000 of COVID-19 resiliency support program funds, grants. To pay for signage relating to the Lower Valley Business District on the highway. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Period. Funds to come from the $60,000 of this grant. Well, I guess funds to come from the proposed $1,000, I don't know how to word it, but $1,000 funds for this to come from $1,000 each from the DMO funding and the visitor services funding.
I'll go to Mr. Hanlon.
If, sir, through you, if it's acceptable to Councillor Taylor, I think if we were to not get into the specifics of the 1,000 and it passes, we can then deal with the distribution of the funds with the subsequent motion as we move forward.
Perfect. Yeah.
If that's okay, and then we don't have to.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hanlon. Councillor Taylor, are you okay with the wording of the motion?
Yeah, I can only speak that I think this is as good a expenditure of the funds, or even better than the ones that are being proposed here. That's why I propose it. It'll help the Valley District folks get business down in the valley, and they don't have to pay for the signage. Some of them are probably hurting, so this will help them.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Hawes.
Just a clarifying question to administration, and I appreciate the citizen coming forward and bringing this forward, but do we have confirmation of that cost, that it is the 2,000? I guess that's my only thing, like, we're only going by what a citizen, so,
Yeah.
can anybody speak to that?
Scott,
yes.
if I could, I actually signed the order or the purchase order here, and I think it was 2,000, but can you confirm?
Yes, I can, CEO, interim CEO Hanlon, through to Councillor Haas. Yes, after a couple years of business dealings with Alberta Transportation, Alberta Safety Signs, and Ledcor, I have a quote with a design that says that the development and the installation will be $2,000. I have a quote from Alberta Transportation.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we're giving enough money. That's all. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Administration and Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor. I'll be in support of this. I was hoping this would find its way through other means previously, but since it didn't find its way, to me, we have an opportunity to take 2,000 from the 60,000 for something that I think is of great benefit to the valley. So I want to thank Councillor Taylor for bringing that forward. And I look forward to finishing up the remainder of the 58,000 on a previous motion or a future motion. Council, any further debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question that Council direct administration to redeploy $2,000 of the COVID-19 Resiliency Support Program funds to pay for signage relating to the Lower Valley Business District on Highway 16. Council, all those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that council direct administration to redeploy $28,000 of the remaining COVID-19 Resiliency Support Program Fund to support a destination management organization, and to offset the cost of the additional request of $30,000 to provide visitor services in the peak summer season as requested by the Hinton and District Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Just give a moment for administration.
If I could, sir, through to Councillor Race, so that's taking and reducing the support to the Destination Management Organization to 28,000 and the remaining 30,000 to be provided to the Chamber for peak summer season.
That's correct.
Okay.
Councillor Race, are you okay with those changes?
Well, it's certainly not what I said, but the gist of it is there. Yeah,
We actually we grabbed out of the report and we're just changing the numbers to reflect the.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Race and Administration. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? And seeing none, that'll bring us to our fourth action item, short-term rental bylaw 1162, interim CEO Hanlon.
Thank you, sir. Through you to all of council. Short-term rentals bylaw number 1162 is before council today for first reading. And just a gentle reminder that first reading is just a bit of a procedural matter, so we can schedule the public hearing at a later date and have a more fulsome discussion at that time. But with that, and to provide any background to the first reading of this bylaw, we do have Lorraine Walker with us. Hi, Lorraine.
Good evening, and thank you, Interim CAO Hanlon, through to Council. Yes. As of Council's January 25th committee meeting, they directed administration to bring the short-term rentals bylaw 1162 with suggested changes for first reading this evening. So this evening, we are asking for first reading. It's a required step as per the Municipal Government Act to initiate advertising for the public hearing and to obtain public feedback on the short-term rentals bylaw. As you will see in your report, we are also asking Council to support administration to schedule a public hearing for the date of March 15th in the Council chambers to hear public comments. Further to the meeting of January 25th, there was a motion that was made that we are seeking Council to rescind this evening, which was not canceled that evening. So we do need to cancel that motion because there was another motion that came forward that would make this obsolete. So from that, if you have any questions, I am here and I welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you, Administration. Council. Councilor LaGrange?
Sorry, I'm missing it, Lorraine. What do we need to rescind?
So if you look at the report, you have the recommended action that Council agree to rescind the following motion, MD 2447, which was to seek consensus that non-principal resident host operator must pay an annual business license fee of $2,000. As you recall, after that motion was made, there was discussion to not allow the non-principal resident operators, and that therefore it canceled out that motion. But in that evening, we didn't catch it, and it wasn't withdrawn that evening. So we have to withdraw it this evening in order to reflect that.
Thank you for that, Administration. Council, any direction, any questions? Councilor Taylor.
No, you go first. Your hand was first, please.
Councilor Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that Council give the short-term rentals bylaw number 1162 first reading. Quickly speak to that. First reading is necessary for this to have its 2 weeks in the paper. So we'll just go with that.
Thank you, Councilor Reyes. Council, we have a motion on the floor to give the short-term rental bylaw 1162 first reading. Councilor Taylor.
A procedural question. Could I make an amendment to the bylaw at this point? I probably could, because it's actually a bylaw now.
It's a proposed bylaw. I suppose that certainly administration could hear any questions to the bylaw, try to answer those. And if not successful, we could consider an amendment.
Administration.
Councilor Taylor, yes, can you please?
Yeah, no, I'd like to apologize to everybody because this is kind of me changing my mind based on public input that I've received in the last week. So I appreciate all the hard work you've done, and I don't mean to flip-flop on this issue, but I'm no longer in favor of this just being for principal resident host people. I want it to be for principal resident host people and non-resident host people as well. So I'd like to at least have the opportunity to put that motion forward on and have it voted on.
So if I may, for administration, just to clarify for Councilor Taylor, there's a multitude of options. You could choose to, we could pass first reading, and then first reading is on the floor, then make the following amendments. It is the purview of, or council is privy to being able to make amendments to it, but then we would be voting on an amendment on a first reading that's been amended. So you may not support all the amendments to it. So I suggest that we still pass first reading and then make amendments. And if the amendments pass, then they are applied. First reading does not end or pass anything, it just puts it on the floor. Administration?
If I could, sir, I see that Heather has her hand up and would like to just speak to this matter.
Thank you, Paul, through the mayor. I would suggest there may be more amendments that come forward after the public hearing. So as you've mentioned that you've heard from the public, and that's why you would like to have an amendment done. So my suggestion is just go for first reading, do the public hearing. When you go to second reading, you can put forward those amendments, because there might be several other amendments that come forward following the public hearing, what you hear from the residents, et cetera, at the public hearing. I personally suggest that you just leave first reading as first reading and schedule the public hearing.
Sir, if I could just follow on that, I completely agree with Heather. It does not preclude council's ability to speak to the motion of first reading here tonight and make any comments they wish at that time. But ideally, if we could get through the public hearing and then consider any possible amendments. And
Councilor Taylor?
I agree, that's sound advice. We're gonna get much more input, so that's probably best. I'll probably actually support the first reading, so sorry to scare anybody if I did that.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Council, we have first reading on the floor. Any further debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll move that council give short-term rentals bylaw 1162 first reading. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Councilor Hawes.
Thank you. I'd like to move the council direct administration to advertise and schedule a public hearing at a regular council meeting of March 15th, 2022 in the council chambers to hear public comments on bylaw number 1162. And we'll just leave it at that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor, which was our second recommendation. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Councilor Taylor.
I'd like to recommend the council agree to rescind the following motion, MD 2447, as follows: to seek consensus that non-principal resident host operator must pay an annual business license fee of $2,000.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor.
I never thought that was a good idea to begin with.
We have a motion to agree to rescind. Councilor Hawes.
Just a legislative administrative question, being as how we're rescinding a motion and we don't have all present councilors here, does that complicate this at all, or?
it does not. You have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Councilor Rice.
I have a question. So when does the person on the prevailing side of the vote have to make that motion? Is that?
Sorry, Councilor Reyes, could the prevailing on which motion?
So if a motion is made and it's passed 4-3, and then, a couple of weeks later, somebody's had change of heart. So on a specific motion, the person who is requesting it be rescinded has to be from the prevailing side of the vote. Someone who said yes. So this does not apply here, right?
Heather, is that anything you'd like to speak to, or? It's a motion, it's not a bylaw, it's a motion of council from a previous council meeting.
Yeah, and I don't see that in your council procedure bylaw. There are communities actually that would require that. And also sometimes some communities won't allow a motion to be rescinded within the first 6 months. But I also don't see that in your bylaw. So I think it's fine this way. And if is the individual here that put that at the meeting that put that motion forward initially?
Yes, he is.
So if you want to just be on on the just cautious, you could just request the motion be put forward by, I'm sorry, I'm not catching all the names very well here online. So it's Councillor Taylor, is it?
LeBaire.
Oh, okay. Yeah, LeBaire, if you'd like to do that, that would be fine as well.
Okay, council, we have a few options. It's really, I don't see the big risk in here. This is from a committee of the whole meeting for a draft component that we're moving forward. It's up to council though, but I think municipal affairs would be okay with us just rescinding this. My train of thought. Council? Seeing none. I'll call to question that council agrees to rescind the following motion, MD 2447 as follows. See consensus that non-principal resident host operator must pay an annual business license fee of $2,000. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? Seeing none. That'll bring us to no discussion items this evening, or information items. Council information packages, well, number 1 for February 9th, 2022. Councillor LaBerge.
There was one more direction, I think, that was part of the background, which is to, and it's what Councillor Taylor was talking about, was that administration could amend the draft short-term rental bylaw, not allow non-resident. Don't we have to make that motion here as well? Because that last discussion was at the committee of the whole, right?
So I'll go to Councillor Taylor. I thought he had changed his mind during this meeting to make no amendments, but.
No, based on the advice of our, that I understood from our legislative manager, it sounded like, let's go out and get all the input from everybody before we start making amendments to this, and then maybe we'll make the minimal number of amendments all at once.
Yeah. Thank you, Council, for that. Council, anything further before we move on? Seeing none, council information package is number 1. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I just want to bring up one of the parts of the information items that came to us in regards to the Alberta 55 plus letter. I was intrigued when I read that in regards to asking for host communities to host the games, and I went into some looking into, you know, what is Alberta 55 plus, and there's a number of different activities that are not just sport related, but other activities as well. And I'm just wondering, to throw it out there, what the harm would be, and if council were to direct, but to have a conversation and to reach out to the organization and see what it would be to potentially host something like this. I think it's a really unique thing that'll happening all across Alberta, you know, and it has everything from swimming to floor shuffle to crocheting to knitting, you name it. There's a whole bunch of different things, and I don't totally completely understand it. I don't think you have to have all the possibilities within your community to host it. So I just thought I'd throw it out there to council to see if there's any appetite, because I'd like the opportunity, at least for administration, to look into it potentially. They even talk about, you know, if hosting the provincial games, it can bring anywhere up to $650,000 into your community with all the you know, hotels, everything else that's involved in it. So it's got a good detail too of a 2019 update hosting responsibilities as well on their website. So any thoughts on that, council? Or
thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I think that it might be an excellent initiative, but I think being a new council and facing all the new challenges that we're facing in a new council, for us to consider this in maybe the first year that we're here, this to me is a really big initiative, and it might be something that we could think of in like year 2, year 3, if we can get comfortable in our roles in the organization and settle down in the organization.
If I could, sir, I see that Ms. Thompson has a comment on this. I think she'll give you more background on this, I believe.
Okay.
Well, I don't know that I can give you much more background, but I don't know if you're aware, Okotoks is hosting the summer plus 55, or no, the summer games. Is it the plus 55 games? I'm not 100% sure on that. It is a big endeavor, though, to host any games. I am competing in the plus 55 winter games this April myself. And it is true, there's different locations that they host the different events, because the city of Edmonton is hosting curling and some other events. And of course, they don't have a ski hill that would be able to do that. I don't know where they're doing all their skiing and stuff, but it might be an idea to talk to different communities that have hosted to see what the commitment and the is to before making a final decision on not moving forward to this. So a little bit of research would be in order.
And if I may, that's all and I agree with Councillor Taylor. It's not something, it seems like it's not something that you have to get on board right away. That's where I'm proposing is just a little research into it to look at it. Because as I'm also looking at it, like it requires a board basically. So it's separate from council, but yeah, that's all I'm wondering is if a quick conversation with the organizing group to see what it entails, and if at some point we can get in a queue of some sort potentially. It just seems like a unique opportunity for a community, and I'm glad you mentioned there's both summer and winter games, so it's not just there's different opportunities as well. So
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor LaBerge.
Yeah, I think it's perfect opportunity for have a look at.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council.
So I guess I'd have to make a motion then to direct administration to look into the Alberta 55 plus games. Is that fair? Or?
If I could, Councillor Hawes, I would suggest to investigate the Alberta 55 games and prepare a report to return to a future meeting of council, just so that we tie up the.
Yeah, and whenever, there's no date on that whatsoever. So,
correct.
Okay, so if you could capture that. CEO Hanlon did a great job on the wording of that, so. And thank you, Ms. Thompson. Thomas.
Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, perfect. That captures exactly what I'm looking for. So thank you. Thank you, Council, for support on this if you see fit.
Council, we have a motion on the floor. My one question for administration, ballpark timeline.
I think if we could get to the end of June, I believe that would be adequate time. Gets a chance to investigate with the organizers themselves and possibly reach out to some other communities that have hosted and get an order of magnitude and bit of an idea around that.
Works for me. Thank you.
And Councillor Hawes, you're okay with that?
Yep.
Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council direct administration to prepare a report regarding hosting the Alberta 55 games and return to a future meeting of council by June 30th, 2022. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, any other questions regarding our information package? Councillor Hawes.
Just want to also quick is I'm happy to see the intern program again coming back to our community. I believe this is a very exciting program for our community, brings new people to our community, and yeah, so I'm really happy to see that that's continuing on. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Love the topic. And my suggestion would be that the next interim maybe be the legislative services and have them work up in that area, you know, to try to learn our council procedures, Robert's Rules of Order, the FOIP legislation. That if somebody could really get a good handle on that as an intern, boy, would they be employable in the future.
Absolutely.
Maybe even in our town.
She may well be. So we do have our intern with us tonight, and and so just to clarify the notification from the province, this confirms her for her second year with the town of Hinton, and it's a terrific program, and it allows individuals to learn those very skills, Councillor Taylor, as well as other skills within the organization. I will agree with you when she's not listening. It's a terrific program. When she is listening, I'll say, you know, there's not a lot of opportunities for her, and she's best just to stay here. But, that's
Thank you for that, CO Hanlon. Councillor Taylor, you're good? Good. Okay, Council, I would entertain a motion to accept the information package for information. Councillor Hawes.
I'd like to move that we accept package number 1 for February, or council information package number 1.
Thank you.
February 9th, 2022.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor to accept the information package. Call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. That'll bring us to our reporting, and this evening I'll start on my right with Councillor Taylor.
I'm okay. I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
And nothing to report, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor LaBerge.
I did have the opportunity to attend HRADC, the Hinton Regional Economic Development Coalition meeting last week, and we are working our way slowly as it is, piece by piece, through the strategic plan for economic development, and yeah, it's been an interesting process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Hawes.
Just a couple of things. Attended the ASH meeting. Councillor Race asked me to attend on Sunday. Nothing really to report there, just business as usual. Excited to start a 4-part series on municipal corporate planning and finance through the EOEP organization. Starts tomorrow evening and every Wednesday, next 4 Wednesday evenings. So excited about that, and also we'll be attending the emerging legal municipal trends on Thursday as well, virtually. I have to say this, virtual has been quite easy on the pocketbook a little bit. We don't have to travel anywhere, and we can stay at home and do this, and I look forward to hopefully being a hybrid of in the future, so that we have opportunities like this at lesser of a cost. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. I'll also be doing that course in our council office, if anyone wants to join and do it there also. And nothing else for myself, and I'll hand it over to CAO Hanlon.
4-1 Flames at the end of the second over Columbus. Just curious. I know nobody cares.
That is
Looking forward as well to taking the EOEP course and may come and join you, Mayor, and looking forward to that as well. And that would be it for myself.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. My apologies, Council. Any urgent matters? Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if everybody would consider this urgent, but it's a good opportunity to ask it. Last week or a couple of weeks ago, I finished my MEO course. And in that excellent course, excellent, learned a lot, remembered a lot. And one thing I do remember is they were saying legislatively, our radar track has to be marked. It has to indicate that it is a radar truck. You go to Edson, that truck is wrapped up saying, man, I am a radar truck. Our truck is any old black or gray truck you'd see in Hinton. So I'm wondering if Mac is available and able to speak to this.
Mac, I don't know if you heard Councillor Race's question. We see a lot of this with the City of Edmonton fleet, and as well, as she mentioned, over in Edson. Have we had discussions with our contractor? Are there plans to address this?
Through the chair, to answer Councillor Race, yes, that is a definite requirement of all providers of automatic traffic enforcement, and they have to have that in place by December of this year. So similar to what you see in Edmonton, where they have the big yellow vehicle that says drive safe across the vehicle, you will see the same thing from all automatic traffic enforcement providers.
So it's not a little sign on the road beside him saying, I'm a radar truck.
No, it is the entire vehicle has to be clearly visible from a distance and clearly labeled drive safe.
And that comes into effect when?
December of 2022.
Oh, so we're overdue.
No.
Oh, I see.
This
Oh,
December.
a year. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Taylor.
Follow-up question, what's Global's plan to follow that? Are they going to wait right to the deadline, or are they going to get on it a little bit earlier?
They have indicated that they will have it in place by December of 2022. If it is council's direction, I can get them to speed that up because they have to do it in all the communities that they are providing services to.
Thank you.
Thank you, administration and council. Any other urgent matters? Seeing none, and Mr. Hanlon, you are good on your end?
I am good, sir. Thank you.
Perfect. And any administrative inquiries today?
Sir, nothing. No.
Okay. Any notices of motion, council? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Hawes. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
To all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.